sharing the gifts of all people. Learn more about us today.
You're watching Rogers TV.
Local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 3 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 6. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Transit officials plan to slash service on dozens of Ottawa bus routes to cope with the toll of the COVID-19 pandemic. We get the details from City News reporter Jason White.
More than 50 bus routes will see less frequent service, some suspended altogether, as OC Transpo plans to cut about 70 jobs.
Through attrition, we're going to be able to absorb all these jobs that would otherwise have been cut.
Transit Commission Chair Alan Hubley tells me most service reductions are on suburban routes into downtown, where some ridership levels have free-fallen to 14% of their normal level. Many of those routes serving the region's largest employer.
I haven't heard from anybody that they're expecting public servants to return to their job. But I also don't think that 100% is going to be staying working from home either.
The changes would take effect in mid-June. The plan goes before Transit Commission at the end of this month. Jason White, City News.
City News time 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
The average high is about 5 degrees. Will be well above that again today. The high near 17 for Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls. Some sunshine this morning, then the clouds increase. And for tonight, a slight chance of showers, the low near 3. Tomorrow, cloudy, showers, and 15. For today, the high 17 degrees.
And right now in Ottawa, 3 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 6. The Chateau Lafayette on York is temporarily closed after staff got word of a patron testing positive for COVID-19. City News reporter Alex Gouge with the latest on the Laugh.
The patron was at the bar on St. Patrick's Day, and anyone who was there between the 17th and 19th is being asked by the Laugh to monitor for symptoms. General Manager Deke LaBelle tells City News it's frustrating having to close, especially after the weekend's warm weather.
We probably would have been able to really make up for some of the closures that we've had over the last 2 months. And, you know, with the changes to the capacity, with the 50% rather than the just 10 people indoors, you know, that makes a big difference for us.
She adds the decision to close didn't come from Ottawa Public Health, who deems the Laugh a low risk. LaBelle says they chose to close to get ahead of any potential spread while keeping staff, family, and patrons safe. LaBelle is hopeful the Laugh will be able to reopen as early as this Saturday. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time 9:02. Terrorized shoppers and workers scrambled to get away as a gunman killed 10 people in Boulder, Colorado. Inside a grocery store. This woman, Sarah, was at the checkout with her son when she started hearing the gunshots.
I was mostly focused on just making sure that he stayed as close to me as possible and that he didn't stand up too far, because I just didn't want him to be too tall and become like a moving target.
Now, police do have a man in custody. They have not commented on the possible motive for that shooting. A number of people turned out for a virtual town hall meeting to discuss the future of Cambridge Street Community Public School, including online trolls. School trustee Justine Bell said on Twitter that they had to create a new Zoom link after the public attracted, quote, too many trolls. The virtual meeting was to discuss the school's low enrollment and how to improve that, as well as garner support from local leaders and community members. Right now, there are just 55 students enrolled, and Bell says they hope to add a French immersion program that could help boost the school's enrollment. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's got the news and the views.
He's got views on the news.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Looks like could be flirting with another weather record today. Jill Taylor. From City News, calling for a high of 17. Environment Canada says 19. Record high, 19.3 degrees, set back in 2012. But the thing about this March, I was looking at the weather data this morning. The thing about this March is how dry it's been. It's the 23rd day of March, and so far this month in Ottawa, we've only had 6.5 millimeters of precipitation, and we haven't had any rain or snow, really, in the last 10 days. Now, if you remember back to March of 2019, we had a very terrible year of flooding along the Ottawa River. We had close to 60 millimeters of precipitation that month. Most of it was rain. And in the bad flood we had again along the Ottawa River, we had close to 90 millimeters of precipitation. It was a snowy, rainy mix. So 6.5 millimeters by comparison, next to nothing. But there is some substantial rain in the forecast. Just in time for the weekend. Just in time for the weekend. Making up for lost time. Good morning. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News. A great program ahead for you. Coming up in just a few minutes from now, we'll talk about Canada, China, the trials of the two Michaels, sanctions against some Chinese officials because of the treatment of the Uyghurs in China. Canada imposing sanctions against Chinese officials, along with the UK, the United States, the European Union. Our ambassador to China is not in China. He's holed up somewhere in Toronto, according to news reports. But what happens now? What are some possible scenarios here when it comes to this relationship? We have a great expert coming up on our program on the Canada-China file. Charles Burton, Senior Fellow, Macdonald Laurier Institute, professor for more than 20 years at Brock University. And the Canada-China relationship has been his area of expertise for decades, coming up from now. Professor Ian Lee, it's kind of a professor's show this morning. We have Professor Ian Lee coming up. He's here every Tuesday. We're going to talk about this idea that there's a housing bubble in Canada, and some of the hot markets in Canada. Now, people have been talking housing bubble bursting in Canada. They've been talking about that for a very long time. Okay. At least, gosh, it has to be a dozen years, maybe even longer than that. And yet it never seems to materialize, the bursting of the housing bubble. If anything, the bubble gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like a hot. And the market, I mean, it just keeps rip-roaring along. I was looking up some data this morning. Toronto Real Estate Board says that during the month of February, the average selling price for a home in the GTA, the entire GTA, $1,045,488. Average selling price. Okay. $1,045,000. And a single detached home. Okay. Single detached home. 3-bedroom bungalow, little front yard, little backyard, like a nice house like that. In the 416 area code, so in the old city of Toronto, will now set you back $1,600,000. $1,684,073. Average selling price. I mean, it makes Ottawa look like a bargain by comparison. Average selling price, Ottawa, $717,900. Okay, let's call it $718,000. Let's just round it up. An increase of 27% in 1 year. And here, some things are just peculiar, okay? Because we're talking about the possibility of an asset bubble. Mobile homes, okay? Mobile home. Now, look, some of the mobile homes are very nice places now, right? Mobile homes. I was looking this up on the Ottawa Real Estate Board's latest news release. 8, this is for February, 8 mobile homes were sold in Ottawa in the month of February. And the average selling price, mobile home, $170,000 for a mobile home, $170,000. Now, back in the furthest the Ottawa Real Estate Board data goes back is to 2012. So I went all the way back to 2012, not quite a decade ago. February 2012, 11 mobile homes were sold in Ottawa, and the average selling price was $67,000. Now the things are going for $170,000. So is that a bubble? When mobile home prices go up 150% in a decade? We'll ask Professor Ian Lee, and then we'll ask another professor, because it's kind of the professor's show this morning, Paul Kershaw. He's out of UBC. Founded a group called Generation Squeeze. I mean, what about young people? They can't even afford to live in the trailer park. What is it going to mean for young people, this crazy housing market we have? What if we end up with one or two generations, they never own their own home? Forever. They have no equity in a house. What are the consequences of that going to be? It's a big issue. You bet it is. So in the middle of it all, there's you. I'm kind of stuck in the middle with you. We do what's known as the Talk Back Hour. We do it every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. You call me, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. It's your hour. You can email me, therobsnowshow@ottawa.citynews.ca. But I'm not very good at reading email on the air. I prefer to take your phone calls and hear your voices. You know, it's a personal connection. Phone calls, we listen to your opinions, we debate the hot issues. Some of the time we disagree and we all get along and it's kumbaya around the campfire, and sometimes we don't, and I'll yell at you. I yelled at someone yesterday. Felt kind of bad for it on the drive home, actually. I don't know what got into me there. But there are a number of things we can get into this morning. Some of it is kind of heavy-duty stuff, but some of it could be lighter fare. On the lighter side, for example, this morning I noticed CAA is now gathering votes online, wants you to vote for the worst roads in Ontario. Worst roads in Ontario. So I would ask you this morning, what's the worst road in Ottawa? CAA didn't do this annual list last year because basically nobody was driving, but they're doing it this year. If you were to vote for the worst road in Ottawa, what road would that be? Time CAA published the list, Carling Avenue, well-deserved, I would say, was the worst road in Ottawa. Hunt Club Road, St. Joseph Boulevard, Riverside Drive. So basically all the important roads. Right. All the main arteries through the city. All the main roads are the worst roads in Ottawa. They're all terrible. But look, you talk to people from the city, you talk to the mayor, you talk to Councillor Tierney, who can't take enough pictures of those pothole-filling devices that they have and slapping them up on Twitter. They'll tell you, the city's putting all kinds of money into fixing up the roads and filling the potholes, and here we go, it's pothole season, right? It's cold at night, it's mild during the day, it's great pothole-producing weather. Is it having any effect? Would you say the roads in Ottawa are better now than they were, say, 4 years ago? What is Ottawa's worst road? Could you pick just one? I'll take that call this morning. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of outrage from the left-wingers around the Ottawa City Council table about the planned cuts at OC Transpo. Okay. I am not one of them. I'm not outraged, okay? I think it's a drop in the bucket compared to what should have been done and done a long time ago. Okay, 70 jobs gone. Councillor Hughley says it'll be done through attrition. Yeah, some routes will be cut. There's going to be a special transit commission meeting next week sometime. These moves, it says $5.5 million. $5.5 million, my goodness. The budget to run OC Transpo for 1 year is $672 million, ladies and gentlemen. $672 million to run OC Transport for 1 year. This will save $5.5 million. So I'm going to hold off on my round of applause. I'm not going to congratulate the city council or Mr. Manconi for showing such, fiscal leadership here at a time. Ridership on public transit is down almost 90%. And this is what the city has come up with? A plan to shave, 0.8% from the cost of running OC Transpo. Way to go, guys. Way to go. $5.5 million on a $672 million budget. And some around the council table, you can hear them now, Menard and the rest of them. Oh, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. We'll get into Aaron O'Toole, Conservatives, climate change, carbon taxes, the Liberals, vaccine rollouts, vaccine supply. By the way, have you managed to score even one dose of vaccine? How did you manage that? Do you know someone who has had two? Someone who is actually fully vaccinated, 2 doses of a 2-dose vaccine. The rarest of all creatures, the rarest of all Canadians. How did that come to pass? Please tell on the Rob Snow Show on the City News.
It's such a beautiful field because it's all natural. I'm able to talk to a lot of people who are going through different journeys of health where they really don't know where to start, where to begin. And I'm happy and grateful to have all this knowledge where I can actually help them and guide them. So, of course, medications have a great place in our system, but even so do natural therapies, which have been around for centuries and centuries. Like, old time, ancient times, everything, herbs grew, everything was done with nature, all healing was done with nature. So I'm totally in love with all the elements with nature. In our beautiful village of Manatic, the Manatic Natural Market, you can find tremendous different things. So we have herbs, we have vitamins, we have natural body care, we do infrared sauna therapy, nutrition counseling, acupuncture, Bowen therapy, energy healing. So we're like a wellness hub along with being a full health food store. We are 1 year into pandemic since it started last year in March. It was a shock. Usually I see things coming, and I definitely did not see that coming. Golden Root is a product that I created 4 years ago, actually for my kids, just for immune system, overall health. And it just took off with certain friends of mine who had cancer or some severe issues, and they started finding that it was really helping them from different tests they had done with their doctor. And I knew I had something really special. So then I went through the proper procedure of being able to sell it. So it's actually, I'm not allowed to make it anymore in my house 4 years ago, and it is made in a Health Canada approved lab, and then it comes to me. And what Golden Root is a formulation of turmeric, ginger, lavender, oregano, and black pepper, all food grade, which is the most bioavailable turmeric in the market right now for pain, inflammation, digestion, immune system, concussion, liver health, and brain health. So, and it tastes like salad dressing. We do a lot of in-house, so we make our in-house concoctions of teas. You can come here, tell us what your health issues are, and we can blend it right there. And there's some that are already prepared beforehand for sleeping, for anxiety, for different things. And in that bar, we basically make cold brew teas and cold brew nitrogen coffee. And again, it's all local. Everything we do is local, and as many herbs we can find locally as well. If a client can't come out, we'll go out of our way to deliver it. And you're getting that personal touch when you come in. If you have an issue, we will listen and help you. We're very, very active in the community, so we would like the same thing back for the community to come to.
Of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
So maybe you've seen the pictures, the video by now. of the diplomats. More than two dozen countries' diplomats denied access to the courtroom in Beijing to view the trial, in air quotes, the trial of Canadian hostage Michael Kovrig. He's being brought up on espionage charges, one of two Canadians detained since 2018, the other being Michael Spavor. He was put on trial in a city in northeastern China on Friday, another trial that was held behind closed doors, and the whole affair lasted for about 2 hours. So there is much to discuss on the Canada-China file once again this morning. Charles Burton is back, Senior Fellow, Macdonald Laurier Institute, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Rob.
Is it fair to even call these trials? Would we recognize them as being trials in the Canadian sense of the word?
Well, we don't really know what happened. I mean, we don't even have evidence that Kovrig and Spavor were actually there, as our consular officials were denied access, and we didn't see Kovrig go in, and the convoy that may have taken in Spavor had blacked out windows, but let's assume they were there. According to what we understand of this process, Kovrig and Spavor would not have had any opportunity to defend themselves against the presumably utterly false evidence occurring in this sort of procedure. So, it's not really a trial. They don't have an opportunity to cross-examine, look at the evidence and challenge it. And, I think essentially this doesn't make any difference to the situation. They just go back to prison and will be released when the Chinese government reckons that it no longer serves their interests in Canada to keep holding them. I think that's really the bottom line.
What kind of sentence could they be looking at, do you think?
Well, be convicted. I think that I'd be very surprised if that precedent wasn't followed. And then, according to past examples, you're looking at something in the order of probably 10 years, but they could theoretically go to life, and in extreme cases the death penalty. But in the case of Kevin Garrett, the Dandong coffee shop owner who was held for over 2 years in the same place where Mr. Spavor is now, he had his trial, which, according to his memoir, Two Tears on the Window, was thoroughly disappointing, as he had an illusion he'd have an opportunity to defend himself and clear up these false allegations. And then a verdict was handed down 5 months later. A verdict was handed down with conviction, of course. 5 months later, he got a sentence of 8 years. 2 days later, they put him on a plane back to Canada. So, it could be that movement on this file as substantively meaningless as it appears to us may actually be indicative that the Chinese government are wanting to resolve this matter.
What do you think of the repeated denials by Chinese officials that the charges and now trials of the two Michaels in China have nothing to do with the detention of Meng Wanzhou?
Well, they say that on one side, and on the other side, as soon as they mention Kovrig and Spavor, in the next sentence they mention Meng Wanzhou. So it's clear that there is initially I think there was a thought that when Meng was detained, request that somehow or other a mistake was made, and hauling in Kovrig and Spavor, whose crime would really be more like being Canadian in the wrong place at the wrong time, would get the attention of Mr. Trudeau and the senior government, and he would then direct the BC Superior Court Associate Justice Heather Holmes to rule that Meng should be sent back to China. Well, that didn't work. And I don't think the Chinese appreciated that we would still be talking about Kovrig and Spavor 833 days later. I think they just assumed that, they'd be forgotten in the Chinese gulag. So from that point of view, it's clear that there is an absolute connection between the two cases. The question really is whether Canada wants to make that connection by making some sort of concessions on Meng with a view to convincing the Chinese to release the two men. I have heard from Chinese officials that, even if the U.S. decides to release Meng, or if our judicial process determines that the process of the U.S. extradition request is not in accordance with the treaty, that they will still retain the two Michaels, because Canada has, as they said, Canada has to be punished for doing this wrong thing.
Okay. What do you make of this show of solidarity by so many diplomats from so many countries?
I think it was great that they went and stood outside in the cold for several hours with our chargé d'affaires. I think that was, a sign that the global community is not prepared to continue to simply allow China to flout the international norms of diplomacy and trade. And of course, it's clear that because of the arbitrary nature of Kovrig and Favor's detention and their brutal incarceration, that other countries are worried that the same thing could happen to their nationals, and in case of some countries, it already has. So I was heartened to see so many countries out there. I wish there'd been more, particularly Asian democracies that seem to not want to do anything that would get the Chinese back up. But it was certainly a wonderful display of solidarity. I would have felt very sorry if Mr. Nicol, our chargé d'affaires, had just been standing there by himself.
Canada joined the United States, Britain, and the European Union yesterday, imposing sanctions on Chinese officials overseeing Beijing's treatment of the Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in China. What should we make of that, do you think?
Well, I think it's great that Canada has, followed the initiative of the EU. It would have been, even more disheartening for me if we hadn't. We've sanctioned 4 Chinese officials who are complicit in the genocide program, and also the Production and Construction Corps, which is a military agricultural installation that exists in Xinjiang, which using forced labor. So, high time, and I think there are a lot more Chinese officials who could go on our sanctions list. There are a lot of Chinese officials in Canada who have significant resources here, bolt holes, money that they've stashed away here against getting on the wrong side of a Chinese communist regime factional dispute, maybe. And, the people who are complicit in Kovrig and Favor's mistreatment, I think, should go on that list as well. So let's hope this is a start, and that the Chinese government will recognize that there are penalties for their senior elite of engaging in these outrages against countries like Canada, that they cannot pretend that it's business as usual when they are engaged in genocide, hostage diplomacy, and gross violations of China's commitment to multilateral institutions like the WTO.
What does it mean that our ambassador to China is not in China, but he's in Canada right now?
I was completely blown away by this. I have no idea why he has returned to Canada. He's currently in quarantine, of course, in Toronto. And then when he goes back to China, he'll have to be in quarantine again. Obviously, particularly when he's in the Chinese hotel in quarantine, he won't be able to do any work because, there won't be any secure means of communicating with him. I wonder if there's more to this story than meets the eye. It was very unfortunate that he wasn't there at the time that this trial came up, because I think not having the ambassador there means that we don't get the same level of interaction with the most senior levels of the Chinese regime. And, maybe if Mr. Burton had actually been on the job in Beijing, he might have been able to get consular access to Kovrig and Favor, because we really don't know what sort of condition they're in. They've only had one consular visit in all of 2021, and considering that they probably had enhanced interrogation preparatory to the trials, hoping they would make some kind of false confession maybe, and that there's a pandemic on and they're living in crowded and unhygienic. I'm worried about how they're doing. doing, and it would be great if we could just see them to reassure their families that the situation is not, terrible.
Okay. Thank you. Again, good to hear from you.
Yeah, I hope next time we talk it'll be to discuss the release.
I hope from the Macdonald Laurier Institute, senior fellow there. 834 days now for the two Michaels in prison in China. Be right back with Professor Ian Lee after the news on City News.
For local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 7 degrees, and in Smiths Falls, it's 9. Here's what's making news this hour. Firefighters right now on scene of an agricultural building on Renault Road. That's near Blackburn Hamlet. Renault is closed in both directions from Anderson to Kemp. A tanker vehicle is being used to shuttle water for the firefighters to battle that fire. Again, around Blackburn Hamlet, Renault Road is closed both directions from Anderson to Kemp. Is Wave 3 of COVID spreading across the country? The Chief Medical Officer of Health, Teresa Tam, expected to address that question today. There are rising case counts in several areas and more variant cases of COVID surging. Our province's top doctor has already said Wave 3 has hit Ontario. A customer COVID case at the Laugh from St. Patrick's Day, prompting that Bytown stalwart to close temporarily. The bar decided to be proactive and shut down earlier, saying it may be able to reopen again by Saturday. Bars and restaurants may be saved by patio season. Restaurants Canada says outdoor dining could be their light at the end of the tunnel. The province has announced bar and restaurant staff will also be among those who will be vaccinated in phase 2 of the vaccine rollout plan, but that's likely not for a couple of months. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And he's the poor professor from the glebe because all his money is in his house, whatever is in his house in the glebe. But he lives in the poor part of the glebe, right? Wrong side of the tracks. Professor Ian Lee, Carleton University. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Well, it's great to hear from you. Look, let me ask you straight up. Do you think we're in a housing bubble?
I think we are, but I want to unpack that.
All right. Unpack away.
And I'm going to go very big picture here because it's essential to understand this. And the reason why is in the last, let's say, year, maybe 2 years, there's been a remarkable number of op-eds and opining by people at the top in government, in the government of Canada and elsewhere, and the head of CMA, decrying and in slightly coded language, condemning ordinary Canadians for wanting to own their house. I've actually read op-eds saying, where did this nonsense come from, that everybody has to own a house? They're really going after ordinary Canadians. Now, they don't use that word. They don't say I'm condemning ordinary Canadians, but they're certainly condemning us for doing what we're doing, which is trying to buy houses, actually buy them. I want to suggest that there's a scam going on here, and I mean an intellectual policy scam that's being used to set the table, I believe, for a capital gains tax on principal residence. And what's driven this, let's step back for a moment, there's been 3 sets of policies not coordinated with the 3 levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal. The federal, we know, this isn't a secret, has through the Bank of Canada, which is owned by the Government of Canada, to the lowest level in modern human history. Federal Reserve says so too. Bank of England went back to 1400, and they said rates have never been this low since 1400. So central banks have driven rates down to almost zero. In fact, some say they're negative interest rates, which is, of course, incentivized us ordinary folks to go out and buy houses. That's the signal.
Well, to go out and borrow money to buy houses.
To go out and borrow money to buy houses. Then secondly, at the same time over the last this has been going over the last 5, 10, 15 years, over the same period, provincial governments have been periodically enacting rent controls and putting a lot of restrictions on landlords, which have had the collective effect of what? Send messages to developers that build rental properties. We don't want you here. Go put your money into Bitcoin or into gold or into the stock market where you'll make more money, because they have really restricted the ability to make rental housing and make a return on your money. So they've engineered, unwittingly, I think, shortages of rental housing, which is yet again motivated people to say, I want to get out of this terrible crisis and get in and own my own house where I can't be, jerked around by a shortage of rental housing. And then thirdly, the coup de grace is municipalities in Vancouver, the GTA, and now in Ottawa, to name just 3, that are deliberately trying to socially engineer shortages of housing stock by putting very serious restrictions on the building of new homes in new suburbs. And they've put restrictions on the expansion of the city. They did it before quite some time ago in Vancouver, same with the GTA, and now we're doing it in other cities, and Ottawa is, of course, the best example. These 3 macro trends, if I can call it that. Unprecedented low interest rates, never been this low before, basically almost zero, and signals to the builders, stop building rental housing because we're not going to let you make your money back. And then thirdly, restrictions on the building of new suburbs has caused people to panic and say, I got to get out there and get that house before it's too late. And then what's really outrageous is many of these same elites turn around and blame us for responding to the decisions, the policy decisions that they have made that have driven and manufactured the housing crisis. And driven by government policies. I'm not suggesting that the Bank of Canada coordinated with the provincial government. Of course not. But the net effect of these 3 sets of policies, monetary policy at the federal level, government intervention at the provincial level into the rental market through rent controls or very serious restrictions on what landlords can charge, and then thirdly, the municipalities, the city council, the town councils, which are trying to restrict the supply of new suburbs has collectively created this almost hysteria in the housing market as people panicking, trying to get their home in the burbs to live. And then these same politicians at the three levels condemn ordinary Canadians for wanting to have their dream house out in the suburbs. I mean, I just think it's shameful that the municipal councillors are doing that, and then condemning us for the problem that they're creating. Not only do they create the problem, then they blame us for responding as we do by rushing out to try and buy a house.
Okay, very interesting that you brought up something I actually have it written down here because I forgot to include this in our topics for discussion today. I'm sure it didn't pass you by that on the weekend, the Globe and Mail editorial broached the topic of the possibility of a capital gains tax on the sale of your principal residence, which is something that governments have flirted with before but have never pulled the trigger because they would fear the wrath of the Canadian homeowner. Could you foresee a time when perhaps the government of Canada would put a capital gains tax on the sale of your house? Do you think those days are coming, or what?
Maybe I'm a tad too suspicious.
Yeah.
But you asked me the question.
Sure.
So I can answer it.
Yeah.
I think that if Mr. Trudeau gets a majority, I believe that we will. He won't do it if he's a minority government. I don't think he could get it through a minority parliament. I don't think the votes are there. But if he has a majority government, it was Mr. Chrétien who famously said, a prime minister with a majority government in Canada is more powerful than the president of the United States. Far more powerful, I think, was his words. There are no checks and balances on a prime minister, or almost no checks. Of course, there's courts and, public opinion, but there's essentially no legal checks and balances on a prime minister in a majority government. And given that the president of CMHC, appointed by the Liberal government, has been giving an awful lot of interviews, and he's very critical of the fact that these consumers are out there buying houses and driving up prices, and he said, we got to do something, And then you see the Globe and some of the op-eds in there going down a similar road, and then you see that professor at UBC who created a research center called Generation Screwed, who received funding from CMHC, analyzing, guess what? A capital gains tax on principal residence. So I think that the ducks are lining up behind the scenes, that they're lining up the ducks behind the scenes, and I think that if there is a majority government after the next election, I think that there's a very high probability that they will go after principal residence. There's a lot of money.
Well, maybe they would structure it in such a way that maybe they would only do it on, say, high-end homes or something like that.
I'm not saying it's going to apply that every last house is going to be subject. They may do something politically astute because they want to get votes and they don't want to get thrown out of office at the following election. So they may say, okay, we'll exempt the first $1 million or something like that, or the first $1.5 million. I have no idea. I'm not privy to these conversations. But there's ways.
Well, it said in the Globe and Mail this weekend, in the United States, gains on a principal residence are taxed with an exemption of up to $500,000 U.S. It's a tax break, but with limits.
I want to point out, I'm writing an op-ed in response to that Globe and Mail editorial right now as I speak, by the way. Okay. And I'm a long time. I've been reading the Globe and Mail since my 20s. Mm-hmm. So I've been reading it for over 40 years. I respect the Globe. I have a digital subscription to them. Pay a lot of money, $30 a month, and I have great respect for the Globe. But I thought that op-ed, that editorial, was misleading. And I'll explain why. Not because I disagreed with it. I obviously disagreed with it, but it was misleading because they neglected one of the most important parts when you talk about the United States and capital gains on principal residence being tax deductible, is they forgot to talk about the fact that you can deduct your mortgage. Well, this is really, really key. If you have if for tax purposes we call your principal residence a quote investment,
right? Yeah.
One of the principal ideas in taxation in every country I've looked at, Western countries, is that all costs associated with the investment are deductible against the capital gain. Brokerage fees, real estate fees, renovations, anything that enhance the value is deductible. So are we going to go down that road? I thought that we were very upset with Americans because they can deduct the interest on their house, because guess what? It favors more affluent people, because more affluent people can have a bigger mortgage, so they get a bigger tax deduction. So, You see, what I'm trying to say is that this going down this road is fraught with a lot of problems. And the other couple of problems I want to point out very quickly is there's a lot of people in this country, I've got the stats, who have bought their house literally 35, 40 years ago. Generation Screwed, the professor out there, talks about this. They bought their house literally 40 years ago. They're not rich. They're not making $500,000 a year. No. They're retired, and they've got maybe income of $50,000 or $60,000 each. Okay, they're middle class. But they're sitting on a capital gain of maybe $2 million.
Right.
They're in downtown Toronto. They're in the Beaches. They're in Rosedale. They're in the Glebe.
Yeah.
There's lots of older people in the Glebe.
Well, maybe not in the Glebe. That's pretty rarefied air, but maybe old Ottawa South.
No, but you know what I'm saying. There are lots of Canadians. Not everybody.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah.
So we go millions of Canadians, many of whom, even though all the pension plans say, don't use your house to look after your old age. Well, let me tell you something. Let me explain the real world to those people. Lots and lots of people I've dealt with over my lifetime, including when I was in the bank, most certainly see the house as a critical component. I didn't say it was the totality of their retirement plan, but it sure is a big part of their retirement plan, including, well, if I do have to go into a long-term care home, which is frightfully expensive, at least I've got my house to sell it, pay for it.
Yeah.
So are we going to go to millions of ordinary Canadians who, yes, are sitting on a great big capital gain, but they're not wealthy. They're not, Bill Gates. They're not Jeff Bezos. They're just ordinary folks.
Yeah.
Who bought their house literally in 1965 or 1968 or 1975, and now they're retired, and they've got a decent income, but they're not rich.
No, they got a little compo house, They got one of those compo houses.
And they woke up one day and said, oh, my God, my house is worth $1.5 million, and I don't have a mortgage on it. Are we going to go after them? And for those who say, well, no, let's tax the rich, let's remember something. When you talk about taxing capital gain, especially on an estate after the parents have died, you're not taxing, quote, the estate, some abstraction. You're taxing the kids. The kids. Because the BMO pension plan group surveyed, and this has been duplicated by another company, used a public opinion poll of people over 65, said, what are you planning on doing with your money? I think it was 98% of people over 65 plan to leave their wealth to their children. I'm one of them, by the way. I don't hide it. That's what most of us do. We're leaving it to the kids. So what we're saying is let's go after our young people by screwing them, sticking it to them.
Again.
Because mom and dad bought a house 40 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
See, you look at the injustices and the inequities here, and they multiply.
All right. That should be a heck of an op-ed. I hope they publish it. We'll see.
I do, too.
Okay, well, we're right back with Professor Ian Lee. You don't have to wait for the newspaper. He's here right now with us here every Tuesday morning on the Rob Snow Show on the City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size, more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes, plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger, plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is, of course, everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our Pamper Items. So your Pamper Items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. Two other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes. They're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Professor Ian Lee is here from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. So last week we were talking about the big proposed telecom merger between my employer, Rogers, and Shaw. This week, it's another big deal. It's in the railroading industry with CP Rail wanting to take over its southern rival called Kansas City Southern. So this could create a railway that spans Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And Kevin Carmichael of the Financial Post has an interesting take on it, that it could be an opportunity for Canada related to reshoring, that there's an opportunity here as we look to kind of reshore supply chains. In other words, make them more robust domestically. So we're not relying so much on stuff that's made in China. Do you think that's a safe bet, or what do you think there's anything to that? What do you think?
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Last week when we talked about Rogers and Shaw, I made the argument, and I think it is a very strong, compelling argument, that it's being driven much more by government policy. And people don't see that at all. They say, oh, two big companies are getting together, it's just two big companies. Well, no, it's because the social mandates being imposed on them by government to serve, incredibly expensive rural remote communities and give them the same services people in downtown Toronto is going to require a much bigger company. And they're not big enough to afford those mandates, so they got to scale up by merging. In this instance, I'm now jumping to the railroad merger. This, too, I see government influence, very strong influence, but this time it's good. It's a benign influence. It's a positive influence. And I mean by that, and before anybody really gets angry at me, what I'm about to say, warning, trigger, something coming, Trump took on, and I'm not a fan of Trump. I said I'm glad he was defeated because I thought he was a horrible racist pig and so on. But he did something that no president had done until 2016. He took on and challenged China, who were cheating left, right, and center. And I'm not saying this. This was the Office of the Trade Rep of the United States government, tables a report in in Congress every year, gives it to the president. It's on the record. Anybody can download it for free and read it, and it goes all the way back for 20-odd years. Year after year after year, they documented the U.S. trade documented the cheating that China was doing. And no president, not Bush, not Obama, nobody challenged, and not Clinton. They were cheating before in 2000. And none of these presidents went after challenged China. Trump did. And now that set in motion a whole bunch of forces. And the biggest one, the most important one, is this idea of reshoring. And reshoring is, I like the word. It's a good word.
As opposed to offshoring.
The opposite of offshoring.
Yeah.
And they're making a bet, and I think it's a real bet. It's a good bet, and I'm not predicting we're going to stop trading completely with China. It's just preposterous. But I do think we're going to pull back some of our trade with China, and it's going to be trade that is more, shall we say, sensitive. And I mean by sensitive, it's going to be any trade that involves technological secrets, technological patents, technological know-how that the government can steal. Anything higher tech, I think, is going to get pulled back. Pharmaceuticals are going to get pulled back. The low-tech stuff, and I'm talking, I don't mean this pejoratively at all, but, the kind of stuff you can buy at Canadian Tire or Walmart or Costco, Tupperware plastic, $1.99 or $2.99. Like, there's no high-tech in there, okay? That kind of stuff will continue to be traded. Wheat and barley will continue to be traded. I'm not one of these people who think that everything is going to cease and China's going to just be all by itself. But we are going to pull back sensitive technologies, sensitive products. So I think we're going to see a lot of pullback on the pharmaceutical supply chain, and we'll see it on automobiles, higher-end automobiles, for example. And so so that's the first point. Very quickly, Rob, the second point is this really is the next step in the long rationalization and integration of the North American economy. I mean, it started 100 years ago, well before NAFTA. It accelerated dramatically after Mulroney negotiated NAFTA with Ronald Reagan, the FTA, and then NAFTA with Mexico and George Bush in 1991 or 2, I guess it was 92. And so this is the next step. It's the integration of the three economies into one. Call it if you want, the European Union of North America. It's Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. are being integrated into one economic unit, and of course the linchpin in it is the United States because it's the largest economy.
Yep.
This is going to produce efficiencies, economies of scale. It's going to benefit consumers because, of course, that means that, as some of the auto industry already noted, it will reduce the costs of moving stuff around, and that will reflect in lower consumer prices, or at least consumer prices not going up as quickly.
Okay, we only have about 2 minutes left, but I would encourage everyone to read whatever they can find about what I call Biden's big spend. They already have this $1.9 relief bill that has passed, but now there's a plan afoot to spend another $3 trillion. I mean, you think of the sums of money that are involved. $3 trillion is more than the entire economy of Canada. Okay. Quote, New York Times today, spend heavily on clean energy deployment, development of other high-growth industries of the future, 5G, rural broadband, advanced training for millions of workers, 1 million affordable, energy-efficient housing units, spending on construction of roads, bridges, rail lines, ports, electric vehicle charging stations, improvements to the electric grid, other parts of the power sector, $3 trillion. I guess that's building back better with a T. $1 trillion. What do you think?
I mean, I just think it's over the top. I think it's gone too far. And lest anyone think that I'm being unfair, I just read an op-ed. Actually, it was an interview, and I think it was in the Telegraph, with the former Treasury Secretary under Obama, and his name escapes me, I'm sorry, former president of Harvard University, really...
Oh, Larry Summers, yeah, Larry Summers.
Sorry, Larry Summers. And the headline of the interview was, this is the worst, he's talking about Biden's stimulus plan, this is the worst fiscal policy in 50 years. So,
okay.
Lawrence Summers, Professor Summers is a really, really, really distinguished economist.
Sure. Yeah.
He's the former president of Harvard University, for goodness sake, and not shabby. And he's a very sharp economist in his own right. And he is extremely critical of Biden's latest stimulus plan. So I think it should be said that if he thinks this is the worst in 50 years, we should at least
You'll take his word for it. Okay.
Well, let's look at it a lot more closely.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. Good to hear from you. Yeah.
My pleasure.
From the Sprott School at Carleton University, that's Professor Ian Lee. Talkback Hour coming up next at 750-1310. Your phone calls are welcome right now. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, it's 7 degrees, 9 degrees in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The Chateau Lafayette in the Byward Market had to temporarily shut its doors. One of its patrons tested positive for COVID-19 on St. Patrick's Day. Here's more with City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Staff at the bar are encouraging anyone who visited between March 17th and 19th to monitor for symptoms of COVID-19. General Manager Duca LaBelle tells City News Ottawa Public Health deemed the laugh a low risk, but the bar is being proactive with the closure.
Our exposure to the individual was very low, but there's still a chance, right? There's still a risk. So we're slowly testing having all of our staff test, hoping for great news and to possibly be able to open as early as Saturday.
LaBelle adds it's frustrating to have to close amid the warmer weather and capacity expansion, since she says that would have helped make up for the closures over the last 2 months. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 10:02. Chief Public Health Officer for the country, Dr. Teresa Tam, says confirmed COVID-19 cases involving the more transmissible variants. BC, Alberta, Quebec, and our province have the highest numbers, mostly involving the variant first identified in Britain. Tam says it is important for everyone to maintain their public health measures, mask wearing, to head off a possible third wave of COVID-19 if it hasn't affected already. Our provincial chief medical officer of health says we are in wave 3 in Ontario. A traffic note this hour: Renault Road is closed between Anderson and Kemp. Firefighters are currently battling the blaze in an agricultural building on Renault near Blackburn Hamlet. Tanker vehicles have to be used to bring water to the scene, so that stretch of Renault is closed again between Kemp and Anderson. Now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
The average high is about 5 degrees. We'll be well above that again today. The high near 17 for Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls. Some sunshine this morning then. For tonight, a slight chance of showers, the low near 3. Tomorrow, cloudy, showers, and 15. For today, the high, 17 degrees.
And right now in Ottawa, 7 in Smiths Falls, it's 9 degrees. Over 60 people attended a Zoom meeting on the future of Cambridge Street Community School. Ottawa Carleton District School Board trustee Justine Bell tells City News the meeting had to be changed after internet trolls bombed the meeting with racist and sexually explicit comments. Bell says a number of opinions were expressed once that meeting got going, many suggesting the school adopt a French immersion program to make it more attractive to parents in the community as a place to send their children. Bell says the board did not commit to any next steps just yet. Right now, the school has just 55 students and is at risk of closure. City News time, 10:04. The Queen Ferry now open for the season. Monday to Friday, the ferry leaves the dock every 10 minutes, starting at 5:30 in the morning, running until 9 o'clock at night. On the weekends, the ferry's a little bit later at 7 in the morning for a start. The schedule leaves the Quebec side on even numbers. For example, 8:20, the Ontario side on the odds, like 8:35. The ferry dock is 20 minutes from Canada in Fitzroy Harbour, and that ferry is the largest on the Ottawa River. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
What's the worst road in Ottawa? Let's see, CAA is gathering votes right now for the annual Worst Roads in Ontario list. What road should be on that list from Ottawa? What should our nominees be? Worthy contenders of the past include Carling Avenue, Hunt Club Road, Saint Joseph Boulevard, and Riverside Drive. In other words, all the important roads, all the main roads, all the arterial roads. What's Ottawa's worst road? And when you think back over the last 5 years, I've done a lot of shows about a lot of bad roads in Ottawa. Are the roads better now than they were 5 years ago? Because the mayor and the city council said they were going to fix up the roads. Have they done a decent job fixing up the roads, or are the roads as bad, maybe even worse than ever. 750-1310, 613-750-1310, 613-750-1310. I would like to talk about vaccines again this morning. Have you had even one dose of vaccine yet? What about you, David? Any one dose?
Still waiting.
No? Anybody in your household have one dose?
No.
You have a household of 2.
0 doses.
0 doses in the household.
We're 0 for 2.
What about your parents? Have they had even one dose?
Not a one. No appointments.
Not even
there.
your parents. So
No.
2 generations, not even one dose. Okay? Have you, good listener, to the Rob Snow Show at 750-1310, scored even one dose of vaccine yet? How did that happen? How did that come to pass? Have you, good listener, had 2 doses of vaccine? 2 doses of vaccine. Meaning, do you know someone who is fully vaccinated? What is their relation to you? How did that happen, that they have become fully vaccinated? That they have managed to score not 1, but 2 doses of vaccine? How did that come to pass? Did it happen here in Ottawa? In some other place, in some other city, in some other province, in another country, perhaps? I would like to ask you as well, do you happen to have any American friends or American family members? What are they telling you about how the vaccination program is going in the United States of America? They seem to be doing better than we are. And Aaron O'Toole is he speaking French or English right now, Aaron O'Toole? Aaron O'Toole? Is he speaking French or English right now, Aaron O'Toole?
Why we're talking about
all right, Aaron O'Toole doing a news conference right now.
Effective plan to reopening. That will include the border. That will include airports, ports, all areas of federal jurisdiction where there should be a national rapid screening and testing process.
Okay, so he's been doing a news conference, but the big thing for Conservatives that's been front and center over the last few days has been the fallout from the policy convention. And, they had this vote on a motion, climate change is defeat. Okay? Climate change is real. Defeated by people who voted at the policy convention. So last night on Twitter, on social media, Aaron O'Toole said we're going to have a serious plan to tackle climate change. I wouldn't mind getting into this again. I would ask you, should they even bother? Should the Conservatives even bother with a plan to tackle climate change? Or do you think it's a must-have if the Conservatives are to have any hope to compete in the next election, let alone win the next election? He talked about this morning, this vote that happened at the policy convention. Go ahead.
I'm the leader, and this is an important issue facing Canadians. And we will have a serious and comprehensive plan on climate change and the environment in the next election. That is clear, and it's something our caucus supports. We can have a plan to reduce emissions while also making sure we support an economic recovery in all sectors of the country and in all regions of the country. Mr. Trudeau prefers to tax. We prefer to partner with provinces, with employers to get the balance right. We need to do it for our society. It's important to me as leader. It's important to me as a father of young children.
Okay. So that's on the climate change vote that happened at the policy convention. There's a piece this morning that the problem with Aaron O'Toole is the party that he's leading, that there's you have a disconnect between the leader and the base of the party. There may be something to that. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Many, many lines available. Adam. Good morning, Adam.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Adam, how are you?
Oh, I can't complain. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah, great looking day. We're on a win streak here with the weather. So
yeah, 1 more, 2 more, and then we're going to strike out for a bit.
Yeah, the sounds of things. So worst road in Ottawa, Adam. What is your take on that?
I can't answer the worst road, I guess, per se, but I can say, just because working from home and having a direct drive, sort of 2-3 roads to work every day, the roads that I did used to drive on are now beautiful.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've lost 2 tires, about $1,500 in damage over 4 years. And that's Riverside, Bronson, Airport Parkway, all along that route. And it's beautiful now. I mean, I I used to work in construction years ago, and I have to say, like, it takes a lot of time. Like, it takes a lot of time to take care of this stuff. And what I don't understand is I don't know if it's a company thing, a bylaw thing, or whatever it might be, but the fact that we don't work at night, like, nothing gets done because the best
doing road construction overnight.
The best time to work road construction is at night. Nobody's on it.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the powers to be they hear what they want to hear, and it is what it is. But I mean, you drive through the States,
right?
And I'm not like a U.S. lover by any means, but you drive through the States, and all of their construction is done at night.
Okay.
And their roads are beautiful for a country that's heavily in debt.
Right. We should do more at night. Yeah. Okay. But you would say, no, this is interesting, though. You drive on Bronson Avenue, Riverside Drive, and one more. You told me one more.
Yeah, like Airport Parkway.
Okay.
A bunch of other,
I know. Yeah, sure. Familiar with the area. And the roads are better now.
Oh, yeah. I think
what they
so.
used to be.
I mean,
yeah, okay. All right. No, that's interesting.
I can feel it under my derriere every day now. It's like it doesn't sit there and bounce, and my car isn't screaming at me saying leave me the F alone.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So good. Okay, Adam. Thank you. Okay, yep. Good stuff. So Adam, thank you, Adam. Very kind of you to say. So Adam says the roads in Ottawa have actually gotten better, at least the ones that he's been on. Those are some pretty big roads. Riverside, Airport Parkway, which they might twin by the time David's grandchildren are grown up. They might actually get around to twinning the Airport Parkway.
Well, they'll take the train anyway.
And Riverside, Airport Parkway, Bronson Avenue, he says the roads are actually better in the last 5 years. Well, the mayor and the council said they would be better, so there you go. There's one. Rodney, Ottawa. Rodney, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Hey, I'm going to give you, like, the lucky update, how lucky we are in Ottawa for the road conditions.
All right, okay. Yeah.
The conditions are actually a lot better than I would have thought they would have been.
A lot better, okay. Yeah.
The reason being is this year, in January, February, we had a really nice skiers winter. We didn't have any rain, and we didn't have any of those thaws, and that's what the difference is in the condition of the
freeze
road.
Freeze thaw. It's brutal, right?
And then roads that I'm going to pick out that are damaged. Mm-hmm. I'm going to just mention Thunder Road and Divine Road, and they actually got damaged with Amazon construction from all the fill that was being hauled.
Oh, really? Okay. So where are those roads? I'm not familiar with those.
They're roads close to Amazon where the trucks went with the fill from when Amazon was built.
Okay. Which warehouse are you taught? The new one that they're still...
Boundary Road. The one
Boundary Road, yeah, okay, the East End one, right?
And I'll be wondering what's going to happen in Barrhaven.
Right.
I'll wonder how much mud gets put on the road in Barrhaven and how many Barrhaven people have to wash their cars.
So the road's going to the big Amazon building near Boundary Road, but pretty bad. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, and then vaccines.
Vaccines, yeah.
For you on that.
Have you had one dose, Rodney?
I got a call for an appointment, but unfortunately, it was a wrong number.
What do you mean it was a wrong number? They didn't mean to call you? They didn't mean to call you, Rodney?
No, I called them back and let them know, and I got like a little information from the people that are doing the booking for appointments.
Right, okay.
Hey, one of her biggest disappointments was working and booking appointments and the people just not showing up and not calling. And,
oh, really?
And she said it was, vaccine wasted.
Yeah, sure. You don't want people skipping doses, right?
Yeah.
We've taken a few calls off the air, people passing along some secret off-the-record information about the goings-on there. So it's happening. Yeah. All right, Rodney, I got to jump, buddy. I got to run. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the call. Talkback Hour, 750-1310, worst road in Ottawa. Have you had even one dose of vaccine? One dose. All I want is one dose. And Aaron O'Toole says, don't you worry, fellow eco-warrior. We will fight climate change, too. Should he even bother? 750-1310, Rob Snow Show, City News.
No Nut Butter is a business where we make allergy-friendly spreads, so alternatives to peanut butter, Nutella, or those kind of things that Kids and adults like to have on toast or on a banana or on an apple, and aren't really available to people with severe food allergies or allergies to the top allergens. When you're an allergy parent, you read every label because you need to know the details of every ingredient that's in the products that you're going to feed your kids. A lot of the products that we were looking at had may contain warnings, which we can't have, and had just so many ingredients in them that you don't know if there's a weird unknown ingredient that is kind of disguised under a different name. So we started No Nut Butter so that we would have the opportunity to have products that were safe and free from the top allergens and had really simple ingredients in them so that you would know exactly what you were feeding your kids. We make 4 different products at No Nut Butter. So we make a pumpkin seed butter, which is our alternative to peanut butter. So it only has pumpkin seeds, roasted pumpkin seeds, and some kind of oil in it. So we usually use corn oil or olive oil. And then we make what we call Choco Pumpkin, and it is our alternative to a chocolate hazelnut spread. So it is our pumpkin seed butter with our chocolate spread, so very much chocolate hazelnut spread. We make a coconut caramel, so it is coconut milk and sugar, and it is our kind of vegan option for caramel, because typically caramel has lots of butter and dairy in it. And then we make an apple butter, which is apples and cinnamon and sugar, and that's it. A sugar-free pumpkin seed butter option because we have some diabetics and just some people who don't want sugar in their lives, and so we do offer that, but you'd have to custom order it. There are very strict rules around producing products, particularly nut-free products. You aren't allowed to cook in your own kitchen, which makes a lot of sense. If you have a dog, you don't want to cook in your own kitchen. But from a nut standpoint, it's just making sure that you have everything really clean and organized. So we cook all of our products in a commercial kitchen so that we can keep all of those health and safety procedures really tight and together. My personal business started a company called Shop Local Ontario during the pandemic, so we were pretty well equipped to go forward into the pandemic in a world of e-commerce and transacting online. You can find us online at nonutbutter.com, or you can find us on Facebook, No Nut Butter, or on Instagram at No Nut Butter.
Your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Some questions today for Erin O'Toole, the Conservative leader, after the policy convention and the controversial vote on climate change. And this is how the Conservative leader addressed it just moments ago.
So only Mr. Trudeau and the Liberals would tax 30 million households, single seniors, small business owners, farmers, drying their grain, to try and tackle climate change when they're actually not partnering with the provinces and with large emitters. That is something we're looking at in our plan now, a much smarter and comprehensive approach to climate change. The tax is not working, which is why Mr. Trudeau is tripling it, knowing full well we will lose jobs and investment to the United States. I will be focused on an economic recovery in all regions and in all sectors of this country, and a serious climate change plan too. Stay tuned. I know you'll like it.
Okay. Well, we'll see. The Liberals are going after the Conservatives for that vote that happened at the policy convention. We talked a lot about this yesterday, how the Conservative Party had a chance to vote on saying climate change is real. The Conservative Party will act, and it went down to defeat. The delegates defeated it. So it took about 7 seconds for the Liberals to pounce on that, and for much of the media to write about how this dooms the chances of the Conservatives in the next election. And Erin O'Toole now into the act, promising that despite that vote, the Conservatives are going to offer Canadians a bold vision to fight climate change in the next election. But, you have this opposition party's policy convention taking up all of this oxygen, right? Meantime, they're the Liberals. They're just treated as holier than the Pope when it comes to climate change. Have you actually looked at their record on climate change? What is the record of Justin Trudeau on climate change? He nationalized a pipeline. When it comes to the issues of climate change, greenhouse gases, carbon emissions, meeting the goals on emissions that we promised when we signed all of these global carbon agreements, what is the record? What is the record? It's a record of failure. It doesn't matter how many canoes the Prime Minister paddles, okay? His government's record on cutting greenhouse gases, on meeting emissions targets, it is a failure. It is not an enviable record. Just ask the even more committed, more left-wing environmentalists out there. They will tell you. They won't be shy about telling you about how poorly this government has performed when it comes to cutting greenhouse gas emissions, despite what the carbon tax happens to be. And yet the Liberals are treated as though they're lily white, okay? And the Conservatives are in the pockets of big oil and the fossil fuel companies going to rape the planet. It's really quite something. The Liberals get away with declaring a climate emergency, and then they do nothing about it, okay? It's like they yell fire, and nobody ever calls the fire department. First of all, you have the targets. You know, we set targets, right? We go to Paris. Well, we send 700 people to Paris, and they party on our dime. And we say, oh, we're going to set targets, okay? Well, Mr. Trudeau's targets, I hate to break it to my Liberal friends, Mr. Trudeau's targets, they're the same as Mr. Harper's targets. The exact same targets. Just ask the Sierra Club. Quote from the Sierra Club. Canada's climate targets are the same as they were under the Harper government and will not be adequate to meet the global imperative to keep warming at or below 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's the Sierra Clubs, not me, Rob Snow. Okay? The targets are reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30% below 2005 levels by the year 2030. Mr. Trudeau promised to do it, failed to do it. Mr. Harper said he would do it, failed to do it. The only thing is nobody ever saw Mr. Harper in a canoe. Are we on track to cut greenhouse gas emissions by even 30% below 2005 levels by the year 2030, less than a decade from now? What do you think the answer is? The answer is no. Climate Action Tracker calls what this country has done on cutting greenhouse gas emissions insufficient. That is the score that we have. Insufficient. We have done little, it says. Done little. And yet, Mr. Trudeau has been playing this paddling eco-warrior for 5.5 years. 2 campaign planes to carry his canoes around the country. Quoting here, Climate Action Tracker, not consistent with holding warming below 2 degrees Celsius, let alone with the Paris Agreement's stronger 1.5 degree limit. Quote, the Canadian government is at a crossroads. It can either continue with the slow implementation of an inadequate climate plan or adopt a recovery practice that accelerates the transition to a zero emissions future. During the last election, the government made a number of promises to scale up climate action, but has, quote, done little to deliver. The Climate Action Tracker rates Canada as insufficient, and yet there are the Liberals, okay, probably fundraising right now off of this vote at this policy convention, holding themselves up as great stewards for the environment. I guess really the only difference is between Liberals and Conservatives is with Liberals you get to pay a carbon tax. I'm worked up this week. I don't know what it is. Paul in Canada. Good morning, Paul.
Morning, Rob.
Yes, sir.
Just as you mentioned, perception is everything in politics, and the perception now is that the Conservative Party, which I'm a part of, are climate change deniers.
Right.
And that will be hung on us until we vote that we're not.
Okay.
So Mr. O'Toole, he has to approach it. He has to come after climate change because it's the only way in the world we can win an election.
Okay.
But the problem itself is the support of the party. And it's because they're all old people like me in their 60s or above,
right,
who are more concerned with now and not 25 years from now.
Okay.
Because mankind is inherently selfish. So we're more concerned about our taxes and everything else.
Right.
So that will always be the driving force until the Conservative Party somehow gets a much younger base involved.
So Aaron O'Toole says, despite whatever vote we had at the convention, I'm coming up with a plan for the election on the environment and climate change, and you would encourage him to do so by the sounds of things.
Oh, absolutely, because I'm still not saying we're going to win the election, because I'm not sure if Aaron O'Toole can get through this, but if you don't start putting that stake in the ground now, if you don't start getting support from a younger generation to at least say we're working towards it, we'll be into oblivion the next time out.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, good stuff. Yep. Let's go to the Fru. Reagan, good morning.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm okay.
I won't ask that.
I'm okay. Aaron O'Toole, you just heard him. We're going to have a serious climate action plan. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think because I'm neither a climate change denier or a supporter.
Right. Okay.
I think he needs to do it in order to win an election.
Needs
but
to
I also
do it.
think
Okay.
he needs to do it because when you govern the country, it's not only about us people on the right and far right. It's about the center people and the left people, and their concerns need to be met too.
Okay.
But what he needs to promote is an alternative to carbon tax. And if you're going to support this climate stuff, then make it affordable to Canadians and quit the subsidies to everybody else. If you want climate change progress, then maybe increase your R&D credits, but that's it. But he has to do it in order to win.
Has to do it in order to win. Okay, thank you. Thanks for calling from the Fruit today. We're back right after the news, halftime, talk back hour, 750-1310. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 10 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 12. Here's what's making news at this hour. Another day with over 1,500 new cases of COVID in our province. Ontario says there are 1,546 new cases today. 58 of them are in Ottawa, 13 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 15. A change in reporting means there is one fewer case now in Renfrew. Toronto did dip below 500 cases today, and the province says also 9 more people have died from COVID. With Ontario in a third wave of COVID, Canada's Chief Medical Officer of Health is warning everyone in the country to maintain measures that are in place. Dr. Teresa Tam says with more than 5,100 confirmed cases of the COVID variants now, health officials feel that is going to be leading this third wave. A new poll suggests Canadians remain deeply wary about the prospect of allowing visitors in from the United States. The online Leger poll conducted last week for the Association for Canadian Studies, it found 70% of 2,200 people asked were either very or somewhat worried about allowing cross-border travel. Fire Service hazmat team called to Renault Road to help deal with a barn fire this morning. A 911 call just before 9 from a passerby alerted the department to the blaze. Shuttle tanker had to bring water from the closest hydrant to fill large water tanks on site to fight the fire. Because of the potential of toxic fumes from burning material inside the barn, the hazmat team was called to decontaminate the crews. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
What's Ottawa's worst road? So many contenders. Could you even name just one? Received an email about this morning from Matt, who says, "Hey, Rob, big fan. I'm a big fan of yours, Matt. Road's so bad, you should see how many steps my Fitbit is clocking in from all the potholes and bumps. My wife is very proud of me. One of the worst roads in this road, yes, as a worthy contender, between Ogilvie and Blair. So there you go, worst road. The reason I bring that up is because the CAA is doing its annual worst roads in Ontario. I think we should send them, we must have a few nominees that are worthy to send CAA from Ottawa. Past winners include Carleton, Hunt Club, Saint Joseph, Riverside Drive, all the big roads, the main roads. What's Ottawa's worst road? And, the mayor has been taken to task, and he's admitted in the past, yeah, I ignored the roads, and I'm going to try and make it a priority to fix up the roads, and council will put some more money into fixing the roads. Have they succeeded? Would you say the roads are better than, say, they were 5 years ago? Well, what's your experience? You're out and about, you're driving around. Have you had even one dose of vaccine yet? Like, just one. Just one dose of vaccine. Do you know somebody who's had just one dose of vaccine? How did that happen? How did that come to pass? What about 2? Do you know one of those people? 2 doses of vaccine? In other words, somebody who's actually fully vaccinated? How did that come to pass? Did it happen here in Ottawa? Did it happen somewhere else, in another city, in another province, in another country? Anybody have any American friends? What are your American friends telling you about how the vaccine rollout is going in the United States of America? And this morning as well, Aaron O'Toole says the Conservatives are going to have a serious plan to tackle climate change. He said that twice this morning. He announced it on Twitter last night. Despite whatever happened at the policy convention a few days ago, I'm asking, should the Conservatives even bother? Or is a serious climate action plan a must if the Conservatives have any hope to compete or even win the next election? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Dennis, are you still with me, buddy?
Good morning, sir. Yes, I am.
That's good. Good to hear. Good to hear you. Worst road in Ottawa?
Sir, I can't give you an answer on that because I've barely driven for the last year.
Okay.
In my opinion, the little bit I've done, I don't think the roads are any better than, certainly no better than 2 years ago.
You don't think so?
Not at all.
No. Pretty rough shape?
Yeah, from the little bit I've done, and I think I've only filled up maybe 6 times in the last year. I'm not impressed at all. They're, I think, really terrible.
So you're not going many places?
No, I am stuck at home here.
Yeah.
I'm at 79 and I am stuck at home.
Right, yeah. Pretty good time to be fixing up the roads, right?
Indeed, and I fully agree with the gentleman who said we should be doing this at night.
Doing it at night, yeah, okay, yeah.
Especially in the main arteries, that's the time to do it, absolutely.
Sure. Now, I was under the impression that they do a lot of work on the Queensway overnight. Because
I have seen that and certainly support that idea, but I think they could do it in other spots. I know there's probably some overtime involved.
Right.
But there's a lot of people work nights, and why not some construction crews?
All right. Yeah. Good point, Dennis. Thank you.
Oh, hey, I've got some comments, though, about the vaccine.
Yeah, vaccine. Yeah, you're 79.
I'm 79, and I booked on Monday, and I know some people that have had 2 shots. This lady went to Florida for a month, and she came back fully vaccinated.
Oh, really? Okay.
Went down just before the restrictions came into place here, and she got back here 2 days before she had to go into the hotel business. So she was very, very happy.
So she got lucky. She got lucky with the timing, right?
Absolutely. And I have a couple of friends that have had their first shot, in our age bracket, in the over 80s.
That's good.
So it is starting to work, but I've had trouble with the site. I'm very, very, very ticked off at Ford indicating that the pharmacy thing was going to come into place on Monday. The site didn't come up, and when it finally did come up, there's nothing available. I don't know what they've done with this AstraZeneca, but it doesn't seem to be available anywhere. And I was wondering about these 300,000 shots that had to be administered before the 2nd of April. What happened to those?
Well, I mean, they were doing the pharmacy shots. They were doing them in 3 communities, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Were they able to get rid of that many in those 3 little communities?
Well, they're not little community. I mean, we're talking about Kingston. What are the other ones? Windsor is another one, right?
Yeah, and Peel, I think.
Yeah, Peel. I mean, Peel's pretty big. Peel's like 2 million people live in Peel, I think.
Yeah, but these pharmacies, some of them, they were
Mississauga, Brampton.
being able to do 40 a day, big friggin' deal. That's not going to go very far.
No. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're frustrated, though. I mean, you're only going to get 1 dose. So this is your first dose, right?
Correct, yep.
Yeah. And then your second dose will be in 4 months from now.
Yeah, that's
How do you feel about that?
Well, I certainly agree with the idea that you should get as many people vaccinated in the first dose as quickly as possible because it has a high efficacy. What it concerns me is that bureaucrats seem to have made this decision. I'd be much happier if the manufacturer itself or who said that this was a practical idea.
Yeah, okay. All right, Dennis, thank you.
Right, bye.
Gotcha, buddy. Yep. I came across this story in the London Free Press this morning, London, Ontario, and it's headlined, "Lack of Vaccine Delays London Area's 4th Clinic Indefinitely." City's top doctor, 3 mass vaccination clinics, quoting here, in London and area running well below capacity. And, I read this headline, I thought to myself, well, I thought we were supposed to be swimming in vaccine by now. Right. But here you have a mid-sized city, London, Ontario, 400,000. You take in the surrounding area, you're north of 500,000 people. And that city's newspaper of record is reporting this morning, quote, "The 3 mass vaccination clinics in the London area are running well below capacity. And a 4th site to help vaccinate people is now delayed indefinitely. It all comes down to vaccine supply," Chris Mackey, medical officer of health for London and Middlesex, said Monday. "We have about twice as much capacity as we need to use all the vaccine that's being sent here," he said at a briefing. "We don't have the supply for the 4th vaccination center. If we did, we would open before the end of the month." And yet we have these news stories all the time. Flood of vaccine, shipments on the way. Will we ever be able to keep up? Will we ever be able to keep up? Will we ever be able to open a 4th vaccination center in London, Ontario? They can't right now because there's not enough vaccine. Then you have this story. This is in this morning's Regina Leader Post. Regina Leader Post. Regina drive-through clinic closed as AstraZeneca vaccine runs out. runs out. The Saskatchewan Health Authority could not provide a date as to when it would reopen. Quote, at the end of day on Sunday, healthcare workers administered 14,000 of the initial 15,000 doses the province had received. Then there's the Toronto Star this morning. Headline, you don't want to run out. Ford government defends lower rates of COVID vaccinations on weekends. Solicitor General Sylvia Jones says a dip in weekend vaccinations, just over 31,000 shots Sunday compared to double that on Friday, is because supplies must be carefully managed to save enough doses to keep clinics running until new shipments arrive earlier in the week. You don't want to run out. It's a supply management issue. They want to have 1 to 2 days worth of vaccine in order to make sure there is a continuous flow at the mass vaccination sites. Premier Ford says the province is preparing to ramp up vaccination to 150,000 a day. Doesn't want to get into a situation where people booked for clinics have to be called and appointments canceled. It's vaccine rationing, seems to be what it is, right? It's not like there's a flood of vaccines. They're rationing like every last dose. North Bay Nugget this morning. Headline, supply preventing local vaccinations for those 75 to 79. Health unit says. North Bay Parry Sound Health Unit. How old is Bobby Orr? Bobby Orr is from Parry Sound. Google that for me. How old is Bobby Orr? Could Bobby Orr get a vaccine in Parry Sound even if he wanted to?
He's 73 years old.
He doesn't qualify anyway. There you go. Maybe if he was number 74, Bobby Orr, he'd have a better chance. The North Bay Parry Sound Health Unit says it doesn't have enough vaccine to vaccinate those younger than 80 at this time. Here we are. It's the 23rd of March. Doesn't have enough vaccine to vaccinate those younger than 80 years old. Until an increase in supply is approved, the health unit is asking individuals between 75 and 79 years of age booking their appointments to help ensure the vaccines currently allocated to the health district be used for the highest priority groups. It's crazy. Some of the stuff that is still happening when it comes to vaccines. Nevertheless, Stittsville, Diane, good morning.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
They're putting a lot of money into roundabouts.
Roundabouts, yeah.
In the West End.
They love roundabouts in the West End. You're right. Yeah.
The road, Huntmar up to Richmond Road in Canada.
Yeah.
It's a mess, but there's a beautiful roundabout up there now.
Okay.
And there's a lovely roundabout at Stonehaven. Terry Fox Overpass is a mess. They have been working on Terry Fox north of there, up in Canada. Mm-hmm. Last year they repaved part of it, but right now you have to be driving, trying to stay out of those potholes there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Also...
But the roundabouts are pristine, I bet.
Yes. Now, Rob, I think you've interviewed Dr. Ball before. I don't know if he's still alive. He lives on Vancouver Island. Right. He's a real meteorologist. He knows all about the weather.
Oh, okay. All right.
Climate.
From University of Ottawa, I think. Is that who you're talking about?
No, I think he might have been.
Might have been, yeah.
He lives on Vancouver Island. Okay. Maybe you can get him on. I don't know if he's still alive.
Okay. Okay. All right. If he's not dead, I'll look into it for you.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Okay. She could have your job, David. Okay. She's gunning for your Shirley, Orleans.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm a first-time caller.
Oh, God bless you.
And I wanted to say that we went for our vaccine on Sunday. On the 21st of March.
Okay.
And I'm 88. My husband is 90.
Holy cow.
It was a wonderful experience. I was so impressed. They handled it beautifully. I can't say enough about how well it was run.
So where did they have that? Was that at the Sportsplex?
At
or?
the Ruddy family.
Oh, the Ruddy, yeah, sure.
Why?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And from the time we arrived at the front door until they called we stayed in the car. They called our numbers for time, each 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then we went in, and it was run beautifully. They couldn't have been nicer, and they were very pleasant and very efficient.
So by the time, let me ask you, Shirley, say by the time you pulled into the parking lot at the Y, by the time you got back home, how long do you think the whole thing took?
An hour.
An hour. Wow, that is a pretty good deal, I would say.
In
and out of there in an hour for the both of you.
My grandson picked us up at 1:30, and we were back home at 20 to 3.
At 20 to 3. Wow, great stuff. Now, let me ask you as well, when will you get your second dose?
On the 11th of July.
11th of July. Wow.
And on the booking, I was on the phone 1 hour.
That's not bad.
No.
An hour on the phone. An hour on the phone and an hour to get vaccinated. Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good.
And we had to sit and wait 15 minutes after the vaccination.
Right. Yeah. Was fine.
Fine.
Yeah. And your husband's fine, and everything's fine.
I have a sore arm.
Okay.
But he hasn't felt it at all.
Hasn't felt it at all. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad to hear it went well for you.
Everything's been wonderful.
Do you know which one they gave you? Which vaccine was it? Moderna. Okay. Yes. Good. All right, Shirley. Okay. Glad you're doing well. Okay.
I like your show.
Well, I like it when you call my show.
I've been listening for years.
Good stuff. Talk soon, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Bernie, you hang on. Rob, you hang on. Barhaven, Richmond, we'll check in with both. Rob Snow Show, Talkback Hour 1047 on City News.
Pamper Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. now it becomes that much more important to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Rob in Richmond.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Fantastic.
Oh, that's good. That's good. What has you in such a good mood this morning?
Well, I got my shot in Kingston.
Oh, okay.
On Saturday. I got the AstraZeneca. The whole process was painless. I mean, even from booking the appointment, which took about 5 minutes.
Right.
And then when we got there, we filled out a form, which took 3 minutes.
Yep.
Into the chair. I didn't even feel the shot. My wife didn't feel the shot. We were out of there in 10 minutes. Back on the road, had a nice lunch home, and I was in the gym lifting weights by 5 o'clock that afternoon.
Okay. So you went and took advantage of this pharmacy pilot program thing that they're doing.
Absolutely.
In Kingston, right? Okay.
Yeah.
What pharmacy was it? Shoppers?
I got it at the Pharmasave on Division Street.
Pharmasave on Division Street. Okay.
Yeah. Great.
So tell me a little bit more about this. Your appointment was for what time, for example?
1:30. 1:30.
And did they see you at 1:30?
We actually got there a little early, and they took us early.
And took you early. Very good. Okay. Were there a lot of people there? Or?
Yeah, it was a pretty steady flow, but they were also doing this. If somebody canceled, they were letting people just walk in and get it without an appointment.
Oh, really?
It was awesome. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. You must have had to be over a certain age, though, right? You had to be.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
You have to be between 60 and 64 when we booked, but I think they opened it up to over 65, but I'm not sure. But it was the best thing. These shots should all be given in the pharmacies. They know how to do it.
Yeah.
They've been doing it for years with so much easier and so professional. I mean, not that anybody else isn't professional. It's just they know how to do it. They've been doing it forever.
Right.
So
when you need a second dose of that vaccine, do you have to go back to the same pharmacy on Division Street in Kingston to get it, or?
Not necessarily, because I've already got the text and the email from the Ministry of Health saying that we're going to let you know based on supply. I should be able to have it right here, and maybe even right here in Richmond.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe by July, hopefully, maybe there'll be a pharmacy in Richmond.
There is. There is. So. Hopefully, they'll be doing it in the pharmacies by then.
Yeah. I mean, a pharmacy in Richmond will be doing it, right? By that time.
Yes.
One would hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have two of them. We have two of them here in Richmond.
Right.
We're not a small town.
No. You're the burbs now. Well, you're the burbs now. Come on, Richmond.
But
Richmond.
The other point is, if anybody, I don't want to hear anybody blaming Doug Ford for any shortage of vaccine. That is all on Trudeau. Every bit of it. It's all on him.
Okay.
They're in charge of the supply, not the provinces. And the province is going to have to hold some back, because there's people that are coming up right now for their second dose, even if it's been longer than the time. Some of those healthcare workers got their first dose
we started dosing people 99 days ago. I keep track of this stuff. 99 days. Okay.
There you go. Yeah. There's people that need their second dose coming up soon.
Yeah.
And if they don't get it, it's a waste.
Thanks, Rob. I'm glad it worked out for you. Thanks for the information too. Very interesting. Yeah, good stuff. It sounds like everybody who has gone to Kingston to do the pharmacy thing, they have nothing but rave reviews about it, about how easy and seamless they made it. It sounds like they've got a real winner on their hands there. Bernie in Barrhaven.
Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Good, Bernie. Thank you.
That's good. Just a little some news for you. Yesterday, when they, at least on the weekend, when they announced that Monday you can apply for the vaccine online.
Yep.
I should have done it first thing in the morning. I didn't. A lot of friends of mine did. They got their appointments. I started in the afternoon, and I ran into a little glitch on the program. Well, what happened was it would let me make my appointment for the first shot, but then the system would go into the second day, and it would put me into July, but it wouldn't bring up the times.
Okay.
The location. Now, I made 12 appointments for the first day. 12 times it put me into the second part, the second day in July, but it wouldn't let me make the time.
Book a time.
That's right.
Wouldn't let July.
That's right.
Right, okay.
So I called a number that was in the newspaper, the Ottawa newspaper, on Saturday.
Okay.
Talked to a girl, and she said, Bernie, it's not your computer. We have a glitch in the system.
I see.
And it started late in the afternoon, Monday. So you're not the only one that's experiencing it.
They had heard about it, and you're probably not the first to get in touch with them by the sounds of things, Bernie.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And I asked her, I said, what should I do?
Yeah. And what'd she tell you?
She said, well, you can go on a waiting list. I said, great. I gave her all the information.
Yeah.
She put me on the waiting list. And I said, can I still go on the system and try to book a time? She says, yes. Try, because I don't know when the glitch in the system is going to be fixed.
Right.
It could be in the next 5 minutes. It could be a couple days. You don't know.
Okay.
So if anybody is having the same experience that I am, then you know it's not your computer.
So when do you think you're going to get your first shot, Bernie?
That's a good question, Rob.
So you're over 75, I'm guessing? Is that
right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Between 75 and 80?
No. It's this is funny. A friend of mine actually put his agent over 80. The system accepted it, and then it started scheduling. But he put his birth date in, and then the system went back into the over 75.
Okay.
So there are glitches in the system, but it's frustrating because I thought, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Am I putting the wrong information in? Is there something wrong with my medical card? I was trying to think of all kinds of things that would put me into the hang-up situation on the system. But it is the system that's at fault. So a lot of your listeners may want to know that.
Okay. Thank you, Bernie.
Okay,
glad it worked out for you in the end, even though it sounds like it was a bit of a hassle to go through all those hoops there. Okay, Bernie, got to run. Thank you. So coming up after the 11 o'clock news, it's budget week for the Ford government, and lots of people with a long list of priorities for the premier. One of them is Stephen Del Duca. Who is he? He's the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. What would he like to see in Premier Ford's budget? Well, ask him right after the news here on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 10 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 12. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Latest case count in Ontario, 1,546 new cases of COVID-19 today. 58 of those are in Ottawa, 13 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark Health Unit, 15 in Eastern Ontario. There was a change in reporting number, meaning there was one fewer case being reported today in Renfrew. Now, Toronto has dropped below 500 cases, now at 465. The province also says 9 more people have died from COVID-19. The federal Conservatives want the federal government to tell Canadians when the lockdown will end. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
With the country a year into this pandemic, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole says his party will introduce a motion today to call on the Trudeau government to introduce a plan within 20 days out of COVID restrictions.
A clear, data-driven plan to support gradually, safely, and permanently lifting COVID-19 restrictions.
It's important to note, however, decisions on lockdowns are not for the federal government to make, but rather provincial governments. Meanwhile, health officials will be holding a news conference later today and will likely address concerns from the U.S. about trial data for the AstraZeneca vaccine. The U.S. Data and Safety Monitoring Board says it's concerned that results from an American trial for the shot may have used outdated information. Yesterday, the drug maker reported its COVID-19 vaccine was 79% effective. The company says it's looking into the finding. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time, 11:02. Ottawa's oldest bar, the Chateau Lafayette, the Laugh in the Byward Market, has temporarily closed. It's out of an abundance of caution after a patron tested positive for COVID-19. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Staff are encouraging anyone who went to the Laugh between March 17th and 19th to monitor for symptoms of the virus. Ottawa Public Health deemed the establishment low risk, but General Manager Deke LaBelle says the Laugh is being proactive to protect staff, family, and patrons. She feels the closure is frustrating, especially during warmer weather and the expansion of indoor capacity. Otherwise, she tells City News the Laugh is in a good position amid the pandemic.
We have great support from our landlord, who we've been a tenant of for longer than he has been our landlord. We're not in a closing permanently right now.
LaBelle says they're in the process of getting staff tested and hopes to reopen as early as this Saturday. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News Time, 11:03. The fire service hazmat team called out to Renault Road to help deal with a barn fire this morning. It was a 911 call just before 9 o'clock from a passerby that alerted the fire service to that blaze. Now, a shuttle tanker had to bring water from the closest hydrant to fill the large water tanks on site in order to fight the blaze. Because of the potential of toxic fumes from the burning material inside the barn, the hazmat team was called to decontaminate the crews. No injuries were reported. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
The average high is about 5 degrees. Will be well above that again today. The high near 17 for Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls. Some sunshine this morning, then the clouds increase. And for tonight, a slight chance of showers, the low near 3. Tomorrow, cloudy, showers, and 15. For today, the high 17 degrees.
And right now in Ottawa, it's 10 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 12. The Queen Ferry is now open for the season. The ferry crosses the Ottawa River at the west end of the city. It is opening the same day as last year, and that ferry does accept either debit or cash. And more than 20,000 diesel Ram trucks sold in Canada and the States being recalled because of the risk of an engine fire. In the meantime, Fiat Chrysler, which is now part of that ownership group, telling the owners to park their trucks outdoors for now. The company says the 2021 pickup and chassis cab trucks have heater electrical relays that can short, overheat, and in rare cases cause fires, even if the engines are turned off. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Budget Day in the province of Ontario is tomorrow. Peter Bethlen-Falvey will hand down the next Ford government budget. Peter Bethlenfalvy, the new finance minister, took over from that fellow named Rob Phillips, who had to leave that post, you remember, after the ill-advised vacation. Nevertheless, let's find out what the opposition politicians are watching for, what some of their priorities are for this latest installment of Ontario's fiscal update. We welcome once again to the Rob Snow Show here on City News, the leader of Ontario's Liberal Party, Stephen Del Duca. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me back on.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you, Mr. Del Duca. So even before the days of COVID-19 and pandemic budgeting, healthcare was the biggest expense, remains the biggest expense for any provincial government. And it's certainly under a lot of pressure now, healthcare, long-term care. Why don't we start right there, since it's so important to so many Ontarians, on the current needs and the more longer-term needs in the healthcare system. What are you hoping to hear? What would you like to see in the budget?
Well, look, I think as it relates to healthcare, long-term care, and the budget generally speaking, the thing to remember is that provincial budgets are a really great opportunity for a premier and for a government to make quite clear to the people of the province what they prioritize, what they value, who they prioritize, who they value. And so I am very, I'll say, hopeful that in tomorrow's budget, Doug Ford will make it quite clear that he has been listening over the last number of months to realize that he's got to be on the side of Ontario's families. He has to stop catering to the very wealthy few, the richest of the rich that we have in this province, which he's consistently done, and instead look at making sure that our frontline workers that everybody's talking about, including Doug Ford, whether it's in healthcare or long-term care or retail or manufacturing or in schools, how everybody has said they've performed like heroes, as they have during this pandemic, we got to put something real behind those words, behind those platitudes. So, for example, in long-term care homes, personal support workers who've never been paid enough money for the work that they do, we need to make sure that increases in their wages are actually permanent, that they can survive. Same sort of thing for nurses. We need to recruit more, both nurses and personal support workers, make sure their compensation is fair and something that they can live on. So a couple of examples right there. But to me, the most important thing for tomorrow is to watch whether or not Doug Ford fully understands whose side he's supposed to be on. I think through the last 2.5, now 3 years, almost 3 years, we've seen consistently examples of how he talks a good game but doesn't back it up with meaningful, competent action. And I hope he will tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. I just want to go back to something that you said. The premier is only interested in helping the richest of the rich in the province of Ontario. Yeah. What do you mean? For example, Mr. Del Duca, yesterday the government announced another, $1.2 billion for hospitals. How does that help the very rich? There's a brand new hospital in your area, the brand new $1.7 billion hospital in Vaughan, is there not?
Sure.
It's brand new.
The $1.7 billion hospital in Vaughan had nothing to do with Doug Ford. He showed up for the ribbon cutting, but that was an Ontario Liberal investment that I was proud to deliver for this community.
Okay.
When I'm talking about being there for the richest of the rich, what I'm talking about, so for example, we've seen right across Ontario, this government's being really determined to circumvent the planning process to deliver what's called a minister's zoning order more than 36 times over the past number of months in a bunch of different municipalities around the province. Yesterday, I announced that if I was elected premier, if I am elected premier next year, I would cancel a mega highway for part of the GTA that would make a whole bunch of people who are already very wealthy even richer. But I'm talking about the general attitude or the general approach to governing. So, for example, throughout the pandemic, many people, including chief medical officers of health, have been calling on the government to deliver on paid sick leave, not at the expense of small business owners who've been battered, but paid sick leave so that essential workers, many of whom have been forced to go to work even though they're not well during the pandemic, can stay home and still support their families. Doug Ford stubbornly refused. He said, there's no chance I'm delivering on that. There's a federal program that's good enough.
Right.
And he's kind of stepped back. So that's one example where you've got to be on the side of those workers and their families, especially during a public health crisis, and he hasn't been.
Okay, I do want to jump to a little bit away from healthcare, for example, and move into education, because it is the second largest expense for any provincial government. You want to be the premier someday. Tomorrow is budget day in the province of Ontario. I know you've talked about Highway 413. I do want to ask you a little bit about that, but what needs to be? What are the priorities right now, spending-wise, do you think, for the government? What needs to be done in the education sector?
So I think on the physical side, and this is what I did talk about yesterday. So I made a commitment yesterday that if elected, I would, over 5 years, deliver $8 billion in new money to help give us the safest and healthiest classrooms that we've ever seen around the province. So state of good repair, building new schools where they are necessary in fast-growing communities like Canada, for example, where there's a desperate need for new schools. That's what I talked about yesterday. So number one, I want our schools to be physically state of the art. I don't want to read any more stories about the fact that teachers have to prop open windows for proper ventilation in their schools. I don't want to read about bathrooms that are in such a state of disrepair they don't meet the right standard for a public health crisis. That's crazy to me, whether we're talking about the Ottawa area or the rest of this province. So that's number one. Number two, I've long been a believer in smaller class sizes. I think it's something that many, including Ontario Liberals, have been calling for since the beginning of the pandemic. And I think there's going to be a real urgent need to deliver on much smaller class sizes as we're dealing with the after effects of COVID-19 in our education system. So those are two examples of where I hope we'll see some evidence tomorrow that Doug Ford gets it.
Okay. Now, tell me a little bit more about Highway 413. Okay, we're in Eastern Ontario, so maybe a lot of people are not familiar with Highway 13. The plan is, as I understand, I'm just looking at a map here, it would go, just north of Vaughan, I guess, down eventually, toward Milton, down that area, right?
That's right, yeah.
Kind of north of Brampton. I mean, these are some of the fastest growing areas of the GTA. There's been explosive growth in all of these areas. The government says, as I understand it, that this is needed to take pressure off of jam-packed highways like 403, 410, and 401. What's wrong with this plan, Mr. Del Duca?
So the Ministry of Transportation started work on this, I would say, about 2 decades ago. And I had the chance when I was Transportation Minister to pause the environmental assessment. I appointed an independent expert panel to do sort of an updated review of whether the highway was necessary. Their report came back to us in 2018 or 2017. It was unanimous. They didn't think that the highway was necessary, especially in exchange for what it would cost us, both in terms of the multi-billions of dollars required to build it and also because of the environmental, I guess, destruction that it would leave in its wake if it was built. So paving over the Greenbelt, paving over farmland, destroying wetlands, and so much more. And so we decided in 2018 that we were going to stop the highway altogether. Doug Ford gets elected. He's decided to kickstart the process again. I have seen estimates of this highway between $7, $8, $9, $10 billion to build about 50 kilometers of highway in an area where the world of transportation has begun to shift since 20 years ago.
Okay.
So the transit investments that have been made in the GTA were not on the drawing board 20 years ago. The extension of other highways in the GTA, some of which I oversaw, the 427, the widening of the 401 and the 410, again, those weren't on the books 20 years ago. We also know that there's a massive requirement for us to tackle climate change. And in Ontario, it is the transportation sector, mostly through passenger vehicles, that contributes the most greenhouse gas emissions. So adding to sprawl, adding to more cars on the road is the wrong way to go. Everybody's talking about it. Most of the municipalities who 5 years ago wanted this highway have now reversed their position. They don't want it anymore. The only person left who wants it is Doug Ford. And he's prepared to take billions of dollars in hard-earned tax money from people all over Ontario and plunk it into this highway that isn't necessary. What I said yesterday was, I'm not going to build that highway. I'm going to stop it once and for all, and I'm going to take the money Doug Ford wants to waste on that highway and invest it in schools right across Ontario, including in the Ottawa region. And I would much rather focus on that and on the families that rely on schools rather than on a highway going to nowhere.
Okay. One more quick question for you. On Thursday, the carbon tax ruling is coming down from the Supreme Court of Canada. Now, you were part of a government that brought in cap and trade, the cap and trade system with Quebec and California, right? And then there was a change in government, and the Ford government repealed cap and trade, dismantled the whole thing. The Trudeau government imposed this carbon levy backstop price on pollution drink box water bottle thing, whatever they're calling it now, the Trudeau government. This whole thing is going to be settled on Thursday by the Supreme Court of Canada. Let's say the Ford government wins and we don't need a carbon tax in Ontario. You become the premier. Would you bring a carbon tax to Ontario? Cap and trade?
Yeah, listen, I think there absolutely needs to be a price on carbon pollution. The whole point of having prices or market mechanisms or a tax is to tax the things you don't like. And I don't know anybody in Ontario who likes the concept of carbon pollution. So I believe firmly there needs to be a price on carbon pollution. There is in the province of Ontario right now, thanks to the federal government. What I think is most shocking and disappointing is that now nearly 3 years since becoming premier, not only did Doug Ford take us backwards and cancel what we had delivered, he's not yet replaced our climate change action plan with anything at all to fight climate change. And I think the fundamental reason is because Doug Ford doesn't believe climate change is real. He's literally not replaced the Ontario Liberal Climate Plan with anything at all, except telling gas station owners they got to put stickers at their pumps, the federal government in court, and, months ago, paying for radio and television ads, again, to fight the feds. This makes no sense to me. I want my levels of government to work together. I want my kids to grow up in a world where we're fighting climate change successfully. And I think Doug Ford's a climate change dinosaur.
A climate change dinosaur. My gosh, you're fired up today, Mr. Del Duca. Okay. We'll see what's in the budget tomorrow. Thank you again.
Sounds great.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Mr. Del Duca is the leader, Stephen Del Duca, of the Ontario Liberal Party. He's going to be a force in the next election. Watch him. 11:17, Rob Snow Show, City News.
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Well, someday there might be a federal budget. We may actually learn the size of the deficit. There may actually be, who knows, maybe even a plan to eliminate that deficit many, many years, maybe decades from now. Learn the true size of the national debt, rumored to be in excess of $1 trillion. So let's talk about the size of the deficit and the added debt because of the spending binge by the federal government caused by, at least in part, by the pandemic. Joining us on the line to go over this new report out for the C.D. Howe Institute is John Lester, Executive Fellow, School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
It's very nice to hear from you. So the theme would seem to be there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, we've been at the Mandarin buffet here, so I mean, like one course after another. How much would you guess? Because I guess we were all kind of in the dark on this, but how much would you guess has been added to the debt because the federal government has had to fight the pandemic?
Well, my estimate that when all the accounting is done, and if the government does go ahead with its planned stimulus, we'll be adding about $550 billion to the debt as a result of all of these policy initiatives and the loss in government revenues and higher expenditures from the recession as they fall off. So that's a big chunk. And one thing I'd like to say about, we're talking about free lunches. We're in the unprecedented situation where the federal government has more or less compensated Canadians on average for all of their losses during all of these income support programs, and on average, about as much went out in income support as was lost during the recession. So that raises the question: if it hasn't been paid for yet, when is it going to be paid for? You lose all that production, and you've got to figure out, well, somebody's got to pay for that sometime. Right. And that will be done by paying down the debt that's been accumulated. And, if there doesn't seem to be any plan right now to be paying down that debt. You talked in the introduction about getting the deficit down to zero. Well, we don't need just getting the deficit down to zero. We need to have a surplus to pay down the debt. So, and if we don't pay down the debt, then we'll be shifting the cost of that recession way out into the future. If we just roll over the debt indefinitely, our children and grandchildren will end up paying for the income support policies that we offered during the recession.
Plus, there would seem to be, Mr. Lester, some evidence, is there not, that some Canadians are coming out the other side of this pandemic and the economic shock of the pandemic actually more flush?
Yeah, well, it's
better off than when they entered it, right? When you look at things like personal savings rates and whatnot, right?
Yeah, well, on average, we've the income is up, but it turns out that the CERB, given its structure, that it was a flat rate, it ends up compensating people who earned less than the flat rate more than they lost. The most they could learn, some people could lose would be, say, if they were earning $1,500 a month. Well, then the most they could lose is $1,500, and they got paid for $2,000. So it turns out that there's a substantial amount of money that went out in terms of ended up overcompensating low-income people for their losses. And that's, that could be a policy. You could say that's something you wanted to do, but it turns out that the losses were kind of, not everybody in low income got a benefit and got this excess compensation. People who happened to lose their job the week before the pandemic got their regular unemployment insurance payments, and people who lost it the next week got the CERB payment, which was much more generous. So you've got two classes of low-income people during this downturn. People who got who were compensated more than they lost, and other people who were compensated less. and they were in similar circumstances. So it doesn't seem like a fair policy.
And you talk about fairness. If I could just jump in here, and you write about generational fairness in your piece for the C.D. Howe Institute, and you argue that if we don't want to basically stick it to the next generation, then we need to do something before they start working and paying taxes. So when you speak about the next generation, when will they begin working and paying taxes?
Well, I think that, just talking about my grandchildren right now, we're about, sort of 7. The oldest one is 7.
Right.
And he's going to start working, he could start working in 18 years, maybe at 25, or he could start working a little bit earlier than that. He could start working in 10 years, depending how things work, 10 or 11 years. So you want to be, and he didn't get very much in the way of benefits from the from the income support programs. I mean, his parents did with, he's better off because he's living with parents who had the benefit of the support. But it's, you want to be thinking about that generation, people not yet born and people alive today, quite young, and they didn't get the same benefits as other people. There's no reason to think that they should pay for it, particularly somebody who hasn't even been born. So that 18 years from now they might start working. In 25 years they've definitely started working. So that's kind of the interval that you want to be thinking about paying down the debt that $550 billion in debt. You want to pay that off before the people not born haven't start working and paying taxes, because that's it would be it's very strange to say that they should pay part of the cost of that economic recession when they weren't even around when it occurred.
Right.
It'd be very strange.
Okay. We've already seen in the UK, for example, or the Chancellor there has introduced one of the largest corporate tax hikes in decades. I think it's 40 or 50. The Biden administration is already talking about a big stimulus package, and it's going to require higher taxes on high net worth individuals, higher corporate taxes. Here we haven't really talked a lot about revenue-raising measures, but maybe it's inevitable. The taxes are going to have to go up. So if that is the case, pick your poison. What's the best poison? What do you think?
Let me just add that I think the best policy would be to cut business subsidies. There's probably there's a huge amount of money that's wasted on business subsidies. So that would be you're almost like your free lunch business. If you cut subsidies, you could get a long way there. And then if you still haven't got enough money to pay down the debt, you probably should avoid increasing the corporate income tax rate. Now, this is a very surprising result that in Canada, because it's a small country and you can borrow as much money as you want abroad, you don't really have any much effect on the interest rates at which you borrow. If you raise taxes on capital in Canada, you get less investment. You don't tax the people who own the capital. You just get less of it. They can shift their investment elsewhere and earn approximately the same return. So increasing corporate income taxes it doesn't result in rich people paying more taxes. It results in less investment in Canada. And when you have less investment, workers have less capital to work with, they become less productive, and they get paid lower wages. So it turns out that in Canada, certainly if you're acting unilaterally, if you're not doing the same thing as the United States, it means that you're imposing a cost on workers in a way that's very inefficient. If you want to tax people and make sure that everybody pays a bit, you'd want to raise personal income taxes or even the GST with appropriate offsets. But the corporate income tax is a surprisingly regressive way to raise income in Canada. It hits working people, in a way that's tremendously inefficient because it causes their wages to drop.
Well, look, I thank you so much for publishing that analysis. It's great to hear from you today from the University of Calgary. So wonderful.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Again, John Lester from the University of Calgary. 11:30 news coming up. And then we'll talk about housing prices. How will young people ever afford to buy a house? Generation squeezed. This is City News.
The Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, the 23rd of March. Good morning. Sarah Buchan right now in Ottawa, mainly sunny skies and 13 degrees. It's sunny and 15 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news right now. Provincial health officials reporting 58 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa out of 1,546 new cases across the province. Ontario health officials reporting 9 more deaths in the province due to the virus. Out of over 32,000 tests. Elsewhere locally, 15 new cases in Eastern Ontario, 13 new cases in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 9 in the past 24 hours. And 1 case has been removed from Renfrew County's case numbers. And the local health units will update those figures in the afternoon. As City Hall opens today as one of the COVID vaccination sites in the capital, the City of Ottawa asking those with appointments not to turn up too early and so help avoid some crowding issues that they are currently seeing. If you arrive more than 10 minutes ahead of your appointment, you make it tougher for those ahead of you in line to actually get through to their appointments, and it's creating some bottlenecks and some jamming and physical distancing issues. So 10 minutes before your appointment, please, to make sure things don't get jammed up. Federal Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole wants the government to produce a plan within 20 days to start lifting COVID restrictions. That includes reopening the border to non-essential travel. But a new Leger poll suggests the party is not in lockstep with popular opinion. It found 70% of respondents are either very or somewhat worried about allowing cross-border travel. I'm Sarah Buchan for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
As I said off the top of our program this morning, if you've been around since 9 o'clock today, people have been talking about a housing bubble bursting in Canada for a very, very long time. I would say a dozen years, probably longer than that. It never seems to materialize, this mythological bursting of the Canadian housing bubble. If anything, the market just keeps rip-roaring along. More than $1 million now is the average selling price. of a dwelling in the GTA, $1,045,000 in the month of February. And if you wanted just kind of that, picture perfect front yard, backyard, a white picket fence, 3-bedroom bungalow kind of house, single detached home in 416, say the old city of Toronto, $1,600,000, almost $1,600,000 now. Average selling price, and here in Ottawa, I mean that makes us look like we're the bargain market with $718,000. Average selling price up 27% in a year. So imagine you're 28, 29, 30 years old, and you're trying to get a foot in the door in this housing market. How bleak is that? Paul Kershaw joins me now, professor, University of British Columbia, and founder of Generation Squeeze in the Vancouver area today. And I just looked it up. Professor, good morning, first of all, and thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
A mere $1.2 million average selling price in the Vancouver area, Metro Vancouver. So it's not getting any cheaper. Are you surprised that this bull market in housing has lasted as long as it has, Professor?
I think I might have been surprised 7, 8, 9 years ago, but I'm no longer surprised because I think that we can say with certainty that when even a pandemic-induced recession is unable to slow down home prices in our country, then we have to recognize, well, it may be unintentional. We have designed our housing system to grow the prices faster and faster out of reach for what locals earn. And that is just a fundamental problem, or dare I say epidemic, for housing affordability that we now need to decide is no longer what we want for our housing system.
Okay. Designed that way to what end? To what end?
Well, I suspect that it's unintentional. I think that many of the policies that we have today shaping our housing system had a variety of, good goals. Some included let's create it so that when people buy homes, it's a way that they accumulate wealth in order to plan for their savings down the road in retirement. And we wanted nice, beautiful neighborhoods. So we had zoning that, interfered with adding the kind of density that we need right now. And, the combination of these factors, in addition to now we have these record low interest rates, which we're using for good purposes again to try and stimulate an economy in the recession. But nevertheless, all of these factors are coming to then propel home prices higher. And for many years, including now, I would say, many of us, homeowners like myself, have not complained because it's just made us wealthier while we have been sleeping and watching TV and cleaning the dishes. But what it's doing is really harming the kids and grandchildren in our lives, the newcomers to our country, and it's fundamentally destabilizing our economies and our cities because it's making hard work no longer pay off like it used to. Let me give you one stat. Just like 4 decades ago, when my mom started out in the housing market in Metro Vancouver, it took the typical young adult 5 to 6 years of full-time work to save a 20% down payment on an average priced home. Okay. That was the case for Metro Vancouver, for BC, all of Canada. If you flash forward to today, it now takes 14 years across Canada on average to save that 20% down payment. It's more like getting closer to 18 years in Ontario. It is 24 in the GTA. It's 28 in Metro Vancouver. That is just years and years of work effort that we are now throwing out the window for young adults because we are tolerating their hard work, not allowing them to buy what it used to buy generations ago.
Okay, so how do you even begin to solve some of these issues then? Where do you start? What do you do?
I think the first has to start with every level of government in your city, both the feds and your mayor, in combination with your premier, to be saying, "Oh, okay, we no longer want home prices to rise." I think that has to be a fundamental shift in policy goals, and it's actually more importantly a fundamental shift in culture. We have to help people make their savings for retirement through other savings vehicles beyond the hope that their home is going
a bank machine for them down the road. And until we have that attitudinal shift in our culture, which makes it possible for our policymakers, we're not then going to change the policies that we need to. And the policies need to come in a variety of places. There's no silver bullet, but we're going to have to be much more attentive to how our low interest rates are harming our housing affordability. We're going to have to pay attention to how our tax policy incentivizes people like me who live in more than $1 million homes to just enjoy tax-free the wealth that we accumulate. We're going to have to acknowledge that we need more density in our neighborhoods. Right now in Vancouver, 1/3 of residents live in 3/4 of the land, squeezing everybody else into that remaining quarter. That's an inefficient use of land that is contributing to rising home prices. And lastly, we need to recognize that with the high home prices we have now, many people are not going to become homeowners. And we have to level the playing field between renters and owners and make it that renters are not viewed to be second-class citizens.
Okay. Let me ask you a few more questions. It's been in the news media now that what was a Vancouver thing, what was a Toronto thing, to a lesser extent an Ottawa thing, has now spread to other cities, whether it's London, Ontario, Moncton, New Brunswick, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Bidding wars happening, homes selling for $100,000 over the asking price, $200,000 over the asking price. Where a house maybe 10 years ago used to cost $200,000.
Yeah.
The idea that it's spreading to these smaller cities, how is that making matters worse? How is that impacting the bigger picture here?
Oh, this really saddens me. I mean, back in 2016, when Generation Squeeze, the organization I started, which is about having a voice for younger Canadians, and we're like trying to sound the alarm, like we can't let what's happening in Vancouver spread to so many other places.
Right.
There was still a chance to not let the harm go to some of the other cities outside of our biggest urban centers. But that chance is now, leaving us. And so once you start to bake in these higher prices, they're locked in. People resist then the idea that, my home price might go down. And so it kind of sets a cultural norm up that then, in Kelowna, British Columbia, or in Barrie in Ontario, or out in Halifax, housing being out of reach for what locals earn becomes the norm. And I just think that we need to just say no more. We just have to fundamentally say this is an issue of the sustainability of our housing system, and it's at the anchor of sustaining hard work paying off in our economies. And we need to double down on that. And so that means we need to go to things like the National Housing Strategy, which actually doesn't have any formal commitment to say, whoa, we don't want home prices to leave earnings behind any longer. In fact, we'd like them to stall so home prices could earnings could catch up. Mm-hmm. It's that level of sort of conceptual shift, and the more that we tolerate and have news reports, dare I say, the housing market's hot right now in Barrie, or it's recovering or whatnot, or it's healthy because home prices are rising. We need to shift that logic entirely and say, no, the next time we hear that the housing price is going up in Ottawa or elsewhere, we have to recognize that's unhealthy. It's unhealthy if affordability is our goal, and affordability has to rise toward the top of our goals for this economy.
Okay, this is pretty radical thinking, though, that we would have to have, say, government policy that would discourage or even outright prevent house price appreciation, house value appreciation. How would you go about doing that?
It's actually not that. It's not really that radical. And policy can't, policy right now is setting the boundaries within which the market is organized, and that's fine. That's what policy does for all of our markets. But right now the policy is signaling, hey, we think it's a good thing when home prices rise rapidly.
Right.
And we incentivize that. So what I'm saying is that we need to change the policies so they no longer incentivize home prices leaving earnings behind. And just, by taking away those incentives, that in and of itself would have a bit of a dampening influence. And that, we can revise, we could ask people like me who have home values over $1.5 million, like, okay, the wealth that we're accumulating there, might that be no longer sheltered from taxation the way that we don't shelter any other asset like in the stock market? Perhaps that high level of wealth that somebody like me has should be more subject to taxation. And then we can give breaks to renters to help stretch their incomes to be able to keep up with the rising rents that they're facing, which are partly driven by the fact that my home value makes me wealthier. It's that kind of trade-off right there that we really need to be focusing on.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Paul Kershaw, policy professor, University of British Columbia, and founder of the advocacy group Generation Squeeze. 11:45. What do cities want in tomorrow's Ontario budget? The mayor of Bracebridge, Ontario, and president of the Association of Ontario Municipalities, Grayson Smith, our guest next here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So again, tomorrow, big news day. It's on Ontario Budget Day. And in Ontario, municipalities are the creatures of the provinces under our Constitution, right? In Canada. Municipalities are creatures of the provinces. So provinces will be paying particularly close attention to what happens with the Ontario budget tomorrow. Municipalities will have a lot riding on whatever Mr. Betham Falvey says tomorrow with the latest Ontario budget. So the next guest on the Rob Snow Show this morning is the mayor of Bracebridge, Ontario, and the president of the Association of Ontario Municipalities, Graydon Smith. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Mayor from Bracebridge. And how are things in Bracebridge today? Nice?
It's beautiful today.
That's good.
We'll take it every day.
I have always, just as an aside, I have always heard Bracebridge is beautiful. It's just kind of like on the edge of the Muskokas, right on the other side of, if from Ottawa, like on the other side of Algonquin Park, right?
Yeah, a ton of beautiful places in Ontario, but we're certainly one of them. We're blessed to be surrounded by rocks and trees and all that is good in nature, so you can't go wrong.
Yeah. You know, on TripAdvisor this morning, it says the top thing to do in Bracebridge is visit Santa's Village, actually.
That's very true. I mean, who wouldn't want to visit Santa's Village? We're halfway between the equator and the North Pole.
Okay.
Santa's summer home. He's been here for over 60 years. He came once, never left.
I did not know that. Okay. Now I know the backstory, why Santa's hanging out at Bracebridge. Okay. Very cool. Look, on to more serious things. Big day tomorrow. Mr. Bethlehem Falvey, the Minister of Finance, will deliver the Ontario budget. We know that municipalities have been hard hit dealing with a lot of costs associated with coping with the pandemic. The thing with municipalities is they have limited sources of revenue, unlike a province. So in terms of priorities from the members of your organization, Association Municipalities of Ontario, what are the top priorities? What do you want to hear from the Ford government tomorrow?
Well, I can say through the last number of months as COVID has gone on that we have had good support from the government, and we're appreciative of it. Through both federal and provincial dollars, it has helped stabilize a very destabilizing time. But increased financial stability going forward is certainly something we're looking for. Obviously, healthy, safe communities and investments in that. We're still in the midst of a pandemic, and we've seen kind of the weak points in the system. An investment in economic recovery as we look forward, continued investment in infrastructure, and an investment that brings everybody along with it. And just the general strengthening of municipal governments. We're really the order of government where the rubber hits the road that people deal with most on a day-to-day basis. And we need to be in a strong position where we can continue to deliver those services, continue to do those things that people expect us to do.
Okay. When you speak of stability, and municipalities need stability, can you expand on that, elaborate a little bit more? Things that are not stable right now that need to be shored up, for example, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, in the last 12 months, we've seen a lot of instability insofar as the need for the services that we provide has not gone away. In fact, has increased in a lot of cases. But the ability for municipalities to do that has been in some cases hampered or at least become more costly. At the same time, we've seen revenues fall, specifically in larger municipalities with large transit systems. That's something you can point to where you obviously ridership is down. But even if you went to a small town recreation department, for example, that's where user fees get generated, and now they're not being collected. So we have had support throughout 2020. We just need to see that support continue throughout 2021 to ensure that these shortfalls that we're experiencing get covered and picked up so we can keep doing what we do best.
Okay, so what would be some possible sources of revenue that, say, occur annually that need to be stabilized? I'm thinking, for example, gas tax, for example. Is that what you're thinking? Something like that?
Yeah, so gas tax revenue that we receive from the province for our transit system is incredibly important. That gets looked at on a year-to-year basis. I'd say 2019 was our last stable year, so that should be the platform that we go forward from. But there are other programs, too, including the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, that not every single municipality gets, but about 389 do. And it's a critical source of operational funding for them every year. You can think of it as a kind of a transfer payment. So there are existing programs already in place that we want to make sure, at very least, remain stable into the future. But at the same time, I think this is an opportunity for both the province and the feds to continue to work together. We have seen Safe Restart money that was specifically directed to municipalities to help us with COVID challenges. The province topped that up with $500 million. I'd like to see the federal government do that as well. But there's also been other programs such as social services relief funding, that has helped with homelessness in communities.
Okay.
And so there's lots of opportunities to provide support.
Okay. I know in speaking to mayors, other municipal leaders, particularly outside of the big city, more small town, maybe a little more rural, a big issue for them is access to rural broadband. How big of an issue is that province-wide, speaking as the president of the Association of Ontario Municipalities? Seems to be a big issue right now.
It's one of the issues that we hear about most, if not the most, when you step away from the financial issues for a moment. We've seen throughout COVID that people simply need and rely on internet even more than ever, whether that's to work, whether that's to learn, whether that is just to be able to kind of interact with the rest of society. And so finding solutions to get internet to either places that don't have it or places that are kind of woefully underserved in terms of the speed and the capacity that they have is absolutely critical. And we've seen some investment in that, but obviously the faster it can be done done with some efficiency to get these people online and really being part of today's economy and today's world is really critical.
Okay. What about public health? For example, in most municipalities in the province of Ontario, public health is mostly funded by the provincial government. I know my experience in Ottawa is about 75% of the money coming from the provincial government. The thing is, costs for public health have been extraordinary over the last year. Very, very difficult. A lot of public health units running deficits, needing budget top-ups from the provincial government. What needs to be done there?
Well, in a perfect world, it's a 75-25 split. It doesn't always work out that way, and you can see some additional costs accrue to municipalities. But I think what this has done is underline the key role that public health plays, not only in a pandemic, but in terms of that outreach to communities that they serve. This was already in a bit of a review phase before COVID hit. And so, we'll need to look at that very closely and continue to work with the province on how to best not only establish those services in communities and protect those needed services, but also talk about cost apportionment in the future.
Okay. I would like to ask you, as Mayor of Bracebridge, to wrap up on this, how life in your community has changed. For example, you're 2 hours north of Toronto, and one of the themes we've been talking about for a long time is people fleeing the city. Has changed Bracebridge, Ontario?
It is. We're a bigger community than we were 12 months ago. There are people that are here on a permanent basis now that were not in March of 2020. And I expect that to continue. We've seen pressures on our real estate market be incredibly high as people look to move here, and it's causing challenges for people who want to enter that market. And that's a familiar story not only in Bracebridge but in a lot of places. But there's been a
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command.